to Unjustified, where we always cover the truth, the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, on an unbiased and sometimes very unpopular opinion. If you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe now and hit the notification bell, and that way you will receive all of our upcoming videos. Thank you so much for being here, and we do hope you enjoy today's video.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Skankers Ball.
We're so glad you could be here with us tonight.
Absolutely. We're running a little late. We didn't get started backstage until just a while ago, and we spoke for just a few minutes. Nelly had some issues up in the horrifically hot hell of Texas, and
yeah, no power for most of the day, so it sucked.
Yeah, she's that's why she didn't get to be at the premiere. But we're here. We made it.
I'm looking at the thermostat. My temperature is now at 85. Thank goodness it's good and cooler.
So, as
and
most
sorry
of you guys
if y'all can hear the fans. I'm really sorry, but I have like 5 fans in here.
Oh, that's fine, honey. It's no problem. As most of y'all know, this case is pretty much cut and dry. The most interesting, I guess, if you want to call it that, would be leading up to what happened here. It's horrific what happened. There's no excuse. It's absolutely inexcusable. In my opinion, it's unforgivable. I know a lot of people do believe in forgiving helps you. I'm not always that person. Some things, in my opinion, are unforgivable, and this is unforgivable. This is one of those things. But the case is pretty much cut and dry. I guess what we really need to do with this case is pretty much let's focus on what in the hell happened and led up to this. As we were doing our research, we were surprised to see that it is a bit controversial, believe it or not. It's a torn case. Some people truly believe that Susan was so failed by so many people that this was the outcome. And they don't believe it was just because of a rich man.
No, and they don't believe that she should be facing this punishment, that she should be out free.
And see, that's where I beg to differ. I think she should spend the rest of her damn life there and never breathe air again. Her sons can't because of her.
Exactly.
But there again, you do have to put into the mental illness aspect in this case. And that it was there. It was evident. There was diagnoses. And they were all brushed under the rug, not by many people in her life, actually by pretty much everyone in her life. And I'm not defending this skank by no means. However, it does need to be a wake-up call that if you see something or if you know something about someone and they have this about themselves, that if anything goes wrong in their life, they completely lose their shit, try to kill themselves, and handle things in the most ungodly way, step in, do something. Just be that stepping stone. Susan should have never been left with them kids alone, ever.
Never. If you see something, say something, even if it's something minor.
Absolutely. And there again, I'm not giving her any sort of poor little Susan cause. You know what? Screw hell with Susan. Okay? She knew better. If she was going to kill herself like she always wanted to, then what's up? She's still alive. But the babies didn't have a choice, did they? They had no choice. Their mother's hands literally strapped them in those car seats and watched, knowing what was happening. And not only that, continue to lie for 9 days. And she didn't just continue to lie, y'all. She even tried to throw it off on a black person, you know, just to make it even more gross the way she was acting, just putting it off on everything when it was her. Why a black person? Why not just say a guy, a white guy? What's
But
the deal?
sh-
That
she
pissed me off.
she gave such a basic description too that it was like it could be anybody. Can you imagine what every poor black man went through
Oh my goodness.
that was questioned and pulled
Oh
in
yeah.
thinking they were the ones that did it? I mean, that's horrible.
Wrong on every level. Wrong. Yeah, the mother should have had the stepfather arrested, right? But at that time, the child, which is disgusting, the child also had to agree to press charges. Can you believe that? Um, Even worse than that, the mother jumped all over her for telling on him, saying it was going to ruin his reputation. The mother. And it's not like the mother was saying, no, he didn't do that. No, because he admitted doing it. But she jumped on Susan. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Like, look what you've done to our family. That's why she was tripping out when David was threatening to tell everyone that she was still sleeping with her stepfather. And yes, by the way, David did know she was sleeping with her stepfather. He knew that.
He would
Again, which
come
is
to the
odd.
house and make him leave so he could be with her.
Yeah, and explain that. And David's admitted he did. He admitted himself he was a lousy husband, and I have to agree with him. But he was a good father, and I believe he was. And he did love his sons. Seeing that their divorce was final probably a week or two before she done this, I wished he had have asked for custody of the kids, but he didn't. He allowed her to have custody, and he just, of course, wanted the visitations on the weekend. Um, she did not need custody of those kids. Absolutely not. I'm sorry, all my birds.
And mind you, remember, she would tell him ways she thought about silencing her children by smothering with pillows, drowning them. She would say these things, foreshadowing that she wanted to unalive her children. And he laughed it off as, oh, she was just joking. She'd never hurt the kids. If somebody comes to me and tells me, "Oh, I think I'm gonna smother my child," but I'm gonna take that seriously. That's not a funny joke. That's nothing to joke about.
No, and she
I
did tell
know
her.
we all say, "Oh my gosh, my kids are driving me crazy. Golly, I'm gonna just beat the shit out of." People do get aggravated, but when you talk about you're gonna kill them, that's not normal by any means.
Absolutely not. And she also told one of the coworkers, I wonder what my life would be like without children. I would love to be with Tom, but, that's never going to happen because of my kids. I mean, come on. There's a flag,
Mhm.
especially when somebody that has as much instability as she does and background. There's suicides everywhere on both sides of those families. It's terrible.
All she had to do was walk in, set the kids down like my brother-in-law's ex-wife did. My brother-in-law and my sister moved to Florida to be closer to his kids because his ex-wife took off with the kids. They were literally unpacking their moving van, moving stuff into their house. The woman showed up with backpacks, their clothes that they had on, and another duffel bag full of stuff. She set them all, the kids, bags, everything, on the curb. They're yours now. I'm done. All I want is the vehicle, and you pay it off, and they're yours. And she got in her car and drove away, and those boys never saw her again.
Well, that's what should be done. That is how it should be handled. I mean, if they're just like with, say, Chris Watts, just give them to someone that wants and loves them. Sign your
Hmm.
rights away. Don't just take it in your own hands to get rid of your kids. That's disgusting, and it's unforgivable.
Amen.
So, Dave, do you have anything to say about it before we start this little clip?
No, you go.
No?
I'm good. You guys are
Yeah.
talking pretty much everything I was going to say. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, y'all, we put together a clip as usual for Skankers Fall that kind of goes back into the case, and we're going to listen to that. We'll probably stop here and there and talk about it a little bit, and that way my birds can calm down while we're listening to this. It's very interesting, and after it's over, we got a letter that MacJay sent us we're going to look at, and I'm also going to make public the closing arguments. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's get started watching this clip here, and it's going to kind of fill you in on some loose ends in the case that you may have forgotten about if you already know the case.
The Union County Sheriff says Smith is repentant and heartbroken. Her car was pulled from a murky lake Thursday. The bodies of the boys were strapped in the back seat. An autopsy revealed the boys were not killed beforehand. They drowned.
Please let me take them. And he said no, he didn't have time because they were in car seats and it was going to take time for me to get them out of the car seat. And they just told me, he said, but I won't hurt them. And he just took off. But he had a gun. And my big thing is they were screaming, hollering, crying. And I'm just scared that he just lost his patience or something.
I plead to the guy, to the man, me and my wife plead to him to please return our children to us safely and unharmed. We love our children very much, and we want them returned to us safe and sound.
Pray even now for their safe return.
Thank you.
Was last seen wearing a red and white striped outfit and a blue and red coat.
An investigation where the suspect is unknown, where you don't know where he's liable to turn up, there's not a lot more than you can do is take the complaints, follow up on them, develop your leads, develop your suspects, and rule them out one at a time. It's slow moving. I have to apologize. There's nothing more that can be done for that. But like I say, it's a classic investigation that could not be run any different anywhere else.
I'm hitting this one. Pray most of all for them, and that they are being taken care of, and that they are safe, and that they will return home safely.
I want to say to my baby that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy and his whole family love you so much. And you guys have got to be strong because you are. I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay. But you got to take care of each other.
Susan, yesterday I know authorities searched your house inside, outside, underneath. Were you there at the time, and do you know what they were looking for?
No, ma'am, I was not there, and I do not know. I did agree, sign a form for them to do that. I was aware they were going to do that, and I understand that's just one of the normalities they have to do in any investigation.
Sources close to the investigation, Susan, have told NBC News that federal agents are focusing, in fact, on the relationship between you and Mitchell Sinclair, the man that you were going to visit that night, the man you said you were going to visit with your children. They've told NBC that there were inconsistencies in your stories. Do you know what inconsistencies they were referring to?
No, ma'am, I really do not know that. But I would like to say that.
Okay, I'm going to cut in here and say, just in case some of you haven't read the book, the mini books in this case, during this whole 9 days that she was carrying on this facade, they were staying with her parents, her mother and stepdad. They weren't together when this happened. David was living in an apartment. He had left them, Susan and the kids, and Susan was bringing the kids to Winn-Dixie to see David about every evening after she picked him up from daycare. But that's one evening that she didn't. But yeah, just to make that clear, they were staying with her family. And the Mitchell guy that Katie Couric just asked her about and the inconsistencies, in her first story, she said that's where she was going. And that's why she was sitting at that red light. That wasn't a red light, come to find out. But that guy said, no, she wasn't coming over there. He didn't even know anything about it. And he hadn't even been staying at that house. So, yeah, that's when she changed her story, of course, after she failed her polygraph test. But just thought I would cut in and kind of let you know that in case you didn't. A lot of people thinks that those two were together when this happened. Not true. They weren't. But they did end up coming together, and both of them staying with her mom and stepfather. She was still having sexual relations with her stepfather.
Yeah, that was a city worker in the engineering department came
Yes.
forward and said that that light only changes red when other cars are coming from the opposite direction. So
Yeah.
that light was always green. So as soon as she heard that, she changed her story to what was it? A street 10 miles away,
Yeah,
So
10 miles away. So how can you, that's getting it wrong pretty bad. They already knew
That's
she
right.
was lying. She was just coming up with all this whatever. And then after 9 days, she told David, they were still at her mom and stepdad's house. And she told David, he was still in bed. And she said, I'm going to go put this letter in the post office. And he said, all right then. And he was watching TV later, and that's when he found out she had confessed. So he wasn't there. He didn't have a clue of anything until he actually saw it on TV himself. And he was at her parents' house when he found out. So
I don't know. Both of them, to me, it sounds like both were players. Like
they
they were
were
just here, there, and sleeping all over the place. And the only reason why they had to get together is, I guess he thought he was doing the right thing when she got pregnant, is to marry her.
Exactly. He only married her because of the kids.
But his family was completely against.
Big time against them
completely.
getting married. They did not want them to be married. He even stated that in
Absolutely
his
not.
book. He
And
said
that's
his
because of
parents
her
were
religion.
not happy.
Yeah, and that was because of her religion.
Mm-hmm.
His religion was stronghold, big time Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was so bad, and to the point that his mother wouldn't even walk into the church for the wedding because she said that she would not walk into a Methodist church. And they got married in the same church that David's brother was. His funeral was held there just soon. What was it, 11 days before they got married? His brother passed away with complications of Crohn's disease. And his mom wouldn't even walk in the church when her son, for his funeral. Then she wouldn't walk in the church later for the baby's funeral either. She stood on the outside of the church because she's not going to walk into a Methodist church. She's Jehovah's Witness, and she will not do it, even though it's her grandchildren and even her son's funerals. She's not going to do it. I found that very, I don't know, just eerie.
Odd.
Yeah, very telling. When they first got married and they moved us, David was living with his great grandmother because he had left the Jehovah's Witness religion. when he was 16, and his mom just wasn't having it, kicked him out of the house. And he moved across the road in with his great grandmother. And when him and Susan got married, they moved, of course, she moved in with him at his great grandmother's. His great grandmother was had pictures of David all over the house with several different ex girlfriends and things like that. And Susan did ask David to ask her if she would please take those down and maybe put up their wedding pictures, and to which she absolutely refused. And David said, no, I mean, these are her pictures, her house, just don't look at them. Susan also walked in the bedroom not long after they got married and found David's dad stretched out in the floor where he had tried to commit suicide because, he just couldn't handle that his son, the one that died with Crohn's disease, had passed, just a few months. He just couldn't get over it. So he tried to commit suicide. Susan found him. This is all at the great grandmother's house. Then when right before Michael was born, Susan said, let's get our own place, so they saved money. Her parents co-signed with them to buy that little house they had. So in case a lot of you, haven't read the books and deep dove into the case, that's just kind of putting a little bit of the information out there. I do believe background and leading up to is important in any case. And I know there's some cases that if you start touching on background or anything like that, you're just the worst person in the world. But I personally believe that you need to know the case as a whole and not just the events.
Yeah, you have to know what happened, what the person was, what led the person to become the way they became, because a lot of it happens in their past, in their childhood, in their teens and adolescence.
Yeah.
A lot of times it leads to what happens in the future.
Yes, and
it gives you an
characteristic.
insight as to what was going through this person's mind when they did what they did.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
helps give you that answer as to why, what the heck,
Yeah.
I mean, and I know a lot of times we
happened?
never know the why because we're not actually in their heads. But going back and researching everything kind of gives you a glimpse as to maybe this is why this happened and this
Yeah.
path chosen is what made this happen. It's just, I don't know, it
Yeah.
just helps gives you insight into the
Many
people that
times.
are involved in this case.
Many times. I mean, you do have cases like, I don't know, for example, I can say we use Carla Homolka, right? It did appear that her childhood was fine, and come from a great family and all this other kinds of things. And she's just, she ended up being the
She
most
was
sadistic,
born evil.
disgusting. Yeah. It's like some people are just born that way. It's almost like that's just who they're going to be, no matter how they're raised or anything else. It just happens. But sometimes you can look back into the back and see what a train wreck everything was leading up to that point, and you're like, there's no way it couldn't have played a role in this person's stability in life.
And I know the death penalty is a touchy subject for people, but I myself personally don't come from me, but I do believe in the death penalty.
Oh, I do too. Absolutely.
I believe that if you're going to do something that heinous, then you deserve to be executed yourself. And people say, oh no, them being in jail for life, they have to think about what they did. Do you think they honestly give two shits what they did?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to think about what they did because they don't care. They did it. And the only thing they care about is that, shit, I was stupid enough to get caught. That's what they think about.
Yeah.
They don't care what they did. And our money, our tax dollars are going to pay for them to sit there and do whatever they want in jail. Some of them still have a normal life as if they weren't out of jail, having sex, having babies, getting married,
Oh, yeah.
watching whatever they want on TV, having their own cell with locks locks and keys to get into their own little personal dorm?
Yes.
I
And
mean,
that's
come
ridiculous.
on.
Exactly. I totally believe in the death penalty. I do believe it does need to be revamped. I believe this whole appeal case is it's just too much to set on death row for 20, 30 years. I think that's completely ridiculous. And I don't think the death penalty should even be handed down if you think there's any reasonable doubt, because when you do that, many times, not in this case because they had the either or, but many times they're acquitted. They just walk. Hence Casey Anthony. So I do think that the death penalty definitely needs to be revamped. But yes, I do believe in it.
Shoot, where I live, Texas is all about the death penalty.
Oh yeah, here too in Alabama. It's yep. Okay, I'll hush and we'll get on with our clip.
Sorry guys about the tyrant. It's just
Sorry about that. Yeah. Well, we need to talk about it sometimes because the clips doesn't cover the deep diving that we did. So.
And I would never knock anybody that doesn't believe in the death penalty. You have your reasons. I have mine.
Yeah.
But hey,
yeah,
we can all still get along here. I still love you guys and hope you still love me. We just have a difference of opinion.
That's right. Same.
And on with the clip.
Yes.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children, Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months. The vehicle, a 1990 Mazda, driven by Smith, was located late Thursday afternoon in Lake John D. Long near Union. 2 bodies were found in the vehicle's back seat. Identities are pending an autopsy.
She needs a psychiatrist. She needs something worse than that. I've never heard anything like this. This is the worst way that Union County could ever be brought on the news. It hurts to know that somebody would do that to a young baby.
To believe that somehow what the mother did in any way diminishes the quality, the character, the courage of what they did. And so my thoughts and prayers are with them today. And I would hope the American people would feel that way as well. I think we were all moved and deeply impressed by how that community responded. And this awful turn of events cannot undermine that.
It qualifies as a death penalty case. Under South Carolina law, we have a number of aggravating circumstances that would allow it to be a death penalty case. But again, it's my policy to not just shoot from the hip until I've seen all the facts. I haven't read all the reports.
There she goes. Got a face covered up.
After conferring with his client, then Mr. Bruck, as I understand it, is waiving the bond hearing at this time. Based on the representations of counsel, then Ms. Smith will remain in the custody of law enforcement and remain in detention until there's further motions brought before this court.
It will be a long time before any of us can even begin to think about overcoming what has happened to us. We have no answers as to what happened. We do not understand why it happened.
Today, we all cry with David Smith.
Along with thousands across our state and nation, cry out to you in our hour of need.
Michael and Alex, toe-to-toe in one little casket. And another signal, the hearse to the final resting place. Another chance to hold ours a little tighter. Last night, another chance to say goodbye. This tragedy is tearing up Dot Frost. Every time she looks across the street, she sees Michael and Alex, but they are not there. Susan Smith's neighbor is bitter.
And when you see those kids out playing, it hurts so bad to think that she would do anything like that to those kids. Because I can't forget those little boys.
The healing process extends far beyond the realm of the church. In fact, many in the community are heading to the lake where Alex and Michael died. John D. Long Lake, another place for us to say goodbye and wonder why.
They lay here for 9 days. It's pitiful.
The healing process is just beginning, in a sense, for all of us. For this is a tragedy that makes us all feel something: sorrow, betrayal, or gut-wrenching pain. It will take time for our emotions to calm, but hope is the great equalizer.
I have not seen God, but I have seen his handiwork. And Michael and Alex were his handiwork. And now they see God.
Susan Smith's story begins with sex and ends with the murder of innocence. It is the story of a woman who, to judge by the evidence offered life, succumbed to her own molestation as a teenager and grew up to become a promiscuous, sexually
Okay, I have the computer reading this because I just couldn't read it at the time. But there is a lot in this that talks about the trial, and it's very interesting. So I would suggest, if you don't know a lot about the case, and I'm going to try to slow it down because I think I sped it up too fast. It's very interesting. This clip here is. This clip is from 1995, not long after the trial.
exploitive adult. Smith ended her marriage to the poor boy who loved her and gambled on a rich boy who didn't. When it all came apart, she committed an act of savagery that defies understanding. She served a pizza dinner to Michael, 3, and Alex, 14 months, and tenderly strapped them into their car seats. Then she drove out to John D. Long Lake and let her maroon Mazda protege roll into the reddish-brown water. The car apparently took almost 6 minutes to disappear, and Michael and Alex, trusting and helpless, can only have died screaming for their mother. Nothing not Smith's sad history or blighted hopes, nor any kind of victim chic can explain that act away. Yet after hearing new and compelling testimony about her tangled life, the same jury that took only 2.5 hours to convict Susan Smith on July 22nd decided just as quickly to spare her life last week and voted unanimously. The outcome flatly contradicts current public opinion. Now more than ever, Americans support the death penalty by striking majorities, and a nation that has heard the squalid evidence about Smith's liaisons with 4 different men, including her own stepfather, voted 63% to 28% in a Newsweek survey that she should have been put to death. So the trial result is likely to divide Americans just as it divides Union, South Carolina. A lot of people in Union are not feeling too good, said Christine Bird, one of many residents who gathered at the courthouse to hear the decision. They thought she should get a death sentence. The dead boy's father, David Smith, said he and his family were disappointed at the verdict. I'll never forget what Susan has done to me and my family, and I even have to say, to her family, Smith said. But forgive, that's something I'm going to have to deal with, I guess, further on down the road. The urge to kill in the name of justice poses infernally tricky issues, and the outcome in the Smith case may be the clearest evidence yet of America's persistent ambivalence about capital punishment. Americans seem guilty of vast hypocrisy. The justice system imposes the death penalty far more often than it actually delivers it. Page 24. Citizens support the death penalty in general, but frequently refuse to apply it when, as in the Smith case, they are confronted with a face, a name, and human frailties that, however lurid, bear at least some resemblance to their own. If a mother who deliberately drowns her children in a pique over a failed romance doesn't deserve to die, who does? Take an eye for an eye, prosecutor Tommy Pope urged the jury. Smith's lawyer, David Bruck, answered with Christ's defense of the adulterous wife in the gospel according to John. He that is without sin among you, Bruck said, let him first cast a stone at her. Smith cried and hugged Bruck when the verdict was announced. Her melodramatic case had placed her squarely in the limelight since October 25, 1994, the day she reported Michael and Alex abducted by a carjacker. The steady drip of revelation, each more damning than the last, seemed almost certain to lead to her execution. She lied to police, conned her ex-husband, and hoodwinked the nation. The emerging facts of her chaotic life, her father's suicide, her molestation by her politically prominent stepfather, her failed marriage, and the tabloid prurience of her repeated love affairs seemed to make her a symbol of small-town decadence. The case appeared tailor-made for an ambitious young prosecutor like Tommy Pope, who rejected repeated suggestions that he let Smith plead guilty in return for life in prison. And it brought her David Bruck, a formidably shrewd 46-year-old lawyer who was deeply opposed to the death penalty. After the sentence, Bruck refused to gloat. There is no good outcome in this case, tragedy from the beginning. It was such an unbearable thing. Bruck had it exactly right. Despite its steamy undertones, despite the right mixture of family dysfunction and sexual shenanigans, the Smith case is ultimately a story of heartbreaking human loss. It was only last week that the true, terrible scope of Smith's dismal world came clear. During the trial's penalty phase, the courtroom became a battleground for the two competing views of the defendant, the scheming vixen, and the emotionally damaged post-adolescent. The witnesses were pivotal figures in Smith's life, men she had slept with, people who'd loved her, and, in the case of her ex-husband, someone whose life she had ruined. What the jurors heard was the fullest account yet of why she did it, and in the end, confronted with the pathos of it all, they decided both sides were right. Susan Smith was both perpetrator and victim. Her descent began with the divorce of her parents in 1977, when Susan was 6 years old. The divorce apparently led her mill worker father, Harry Vaughn, to commit suicide 1 month later, an event that may have helped create the emotional vacuum that has haunted her ever since. Linda Vaughn married stockbroker Beverly Russell, the son of a leading local family, about a year and a half later. The marriage was a step up. Susan and her brothers, Michael and Scotty, moved into a comfortable ranch house in Mount Vernon Estates, an upscale subdivision outside Union. Russell, 48, was then active in South Carolina Republican politics and in Pat Robertson's Christian Coalition, but he is no longer, and the shattering disclosures triggered by his stepdaughter's prosecution are the reason. According to previously secret records from a state family court, Russell began molesting Susan when she was 15. Although Russell clearly initiated sexual contact, the case file suggests Susan may have led him on. Linda Russell told a social worker that Susan told her Bev was sitting in the chair watching TV and Susan got in his lap and went to sleep. Then he slid her bra up and fondled her breast and took her hand and put it on his penis. The report says Linda later asked Beverly about Susan's story and he didn't deny that it had happened. He told her he felt like some kind of pervert when it happened. Russell signed a statement admitting his conduct and the family sought counseling, but Susan and her mother said they didn't want to prosecute. Susan graduated from Union High School in 1989 and went to work in the local Winn-Dixie supermarket as a checkout girl. David Smith worked in the store as a produce clerk. Before she and David began to date, Susan told a psychiatrist she had an affair with a store manager who was subsequently transferred out of town. She was 2 months pregnant. The child was David's when they were married on March 15, 1991. They eventually settled down in a brick starter home in Union. Michael was born in 1991, Alex followed in 1993, and Susan gave every appearance of being a doting mother. But the marriage slowly unraveled. In 1994, Susan sued for divorce, alleging infidelity, and David later countersued, also alleging infidelity. The divorce was granted after her arrest. A strapping, silver-haired man, Russell stunned the courtroom by admitting that his consensual involvement with Susan continued intermittently through her marriage and subsequent separation from David Smith. He even admitted to having sexual encounters with Susan as recently as August 1994, less than 3 months before she killed her sons. The dramatic high point came when he read aloud from a letter he'd sent Susan on Father's Day, 1995, when she was already in prison. "You don't have all the guilt in this tragedy," he read, sobbing. "Had I been true to you and my responsibilities, you would have been stronger in yourself, not needing to be constantly supported and reassured emotionally. My heart breaks for what I've done to you, for your pain and for your loss." It was not her loss alone. The prosecution's main weapon was tear-drenched testimony from a vengeful David Smith, who accepted a box of tissues from Judge William Howard. Smith had stood by his estranged wife during her 9-day charade, and he said he first heard about her confession on television. "I didn't know what to do," he said. "Everything I had planned on, my life with my kids, was gone." That was the bitter end of a tumultuous, too early marriage. By the late summer of 1994, Susan told the defense's psychiatrists she was sexually involved with 4 different men: Bay Russell, David Smith, Tom Findley, and Tom's father, Kerry. Kerry Findley has denied any involvement with Smith. Findley Sr. owns a company called Conso Incorporated, which makes interior decorating products. He is among the wealthiest Union County residents. He hired Smith as an assistant to his executive assistant in 1994, and she got to know his son while working at the Conso plant. Tom Findley, 28, is a graphic designer who works in his father's firm. He is known to some local young women as the Catch. Tom Findley testified as a prosecution witness at the trial for, in the prosecution's view, he was the real reason Susan killed her boys. Findley, balding early, is nice looking if not quite a hunk. He allegedly told investigators that he considered himself a ladies' man whose mission in life was servicing these women. As he told it, he and Susan became lovers in early 1994. He broke it off sometime in March, Findley said, after David Smith caught them talking on the phone and angrily warned him to stay away from Susan. Concerned for his safety, Findley avoided Susan from March to September. Then Susan told him she and David were going through with the divorce, Findley said, and he resumed their affair. On the weekend of October 15th, Tom invited Susan to his father's estate for a hot tub party. According to sources close to the case, Susan has said she became jealous when Tom began necking with another woman. She flirted with another man, and Tom, to judge by the Dear Jane letter he sent her 2 days later, was at least somewhat offended. The letter is a classic of its caddish kind. Findley read it aloud in court. Dear Susan, Findley said, this is a difficult letter to write because I know how much you think of me. You are intelligent, beautiful, sensitive, and possess many other wonderful qualities that I and many other men appreciate. You will without a doubt make some lucky man a great wife. But unfortunately, it won't be me. Susan, I could really fall for you, he continued. But like I have told you before, there are some things about you that aren't suited to me, and yes, I am speaking about your children. Susan, I am not mad at you about what happened at the hot tub party, Findley wrote. But seeing you kiss another man put things back into perspective. I would hate for people to perceive you as an unreputable, sick person. If you want to catch a nice guy like me one day, you have to act like a nice girl. This smarmy rejection threw Smith into panic. Over the next several days, Findley testified, they had a series of highly emotional conversations. Their last meetings came on October 25th at the Conso plant. She was crying. She was very upset, Findley said. She proceeded to tell me she had had an affair with her stepfather, and she told me she had a sexual relationship with my father. I told her the intimate part of our relationship would have to end. She went to his office later the same day to return an Auburn University sweatshirt that belonged to Findley. She said, I'm going to give you this. I may not see you again, Findley recalled. He told her to keep it. Smith was wearing the shirt when she drove her sons to the lake that evening. Hours later, a coworker called to ask if he had heard the news about Susan, and Findley's first thought was, oh my God, she's killed herself. To prosecutors, Findley's emphasis on the children was Smith's motive for murder. They argued there was no evidence, as the defense claimed, that Smith had driven to the lake to commit suicide. They made a point of showing jurors the videotaped interviews in which Smith tearfully maintained the kidnapping hoax. Susan Smith chose to do the worst thing a mother can do and covered it up, Pope argued, pushing for the death penalty. He said her family history was just the abuse excuse. The jury found otherwise, a tacit recognition that the core issue was whether Smith was mentally ill. South Carolina's definition of insanity is one of the most restrictive in the nation. It did not permit Smith to plead not guilty by reason of insanity or, more plausibly, temporary insanity. A team of state psychiatrists certified that Smith was competent to stand trial, but they also said she suffered from a mental illness that could have affected her behavior, and one of the shrinks, Dr. Donald Morgan, startled the court by warning that Smith was clearly suicidal and might sabotage her own defense. Other testimony pointed to the deep shame that stemmed from her incestuous relationship with Russell. The psychiatric view was that Smith is a uniquely fragile person who had concealed her emotional conflicts for years. Killing her sons was a horrifying act that bespeaks a personality crisis. At that moment, she must have been emotionally numb. If Smith in fact was rational, why risk a police investigation? Why not simply give custody of the boys to their father? The jury was 11-1 in favor of life in prison when it began deliberating her sentence, and the lone hardliner finally joined the majority. We all felt like Susan was a really disturbed person, said juror Deborah Benvenuti. Giving her the death penalty wouldn't serve justice. Susan Smith has been returned to her tiny cell at the Women's Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. She has no personal possessions, no contact with other inmates, and she wears only paper gowns, a precaution against suicide, because real clothes can be turned into nooses. Barring an appeal, she will be in prison for at least 80 years, condemned not to die, but to live with her ghastly...
The jury swiftly rejected the death penalty for Susan Smith, sentencing her to life in prison Friday after her lawyer argued she is tormented enough in her own lake of fire for drowning her 2 young sons. She will be eligible for parole in 30 years. For 9 days last fall, Smith insisted that a black man had commandeered her car as she drove on a dark, empty back road. She begged tearfully on nationwide television for her son's safe return, at last confessing November 3 that she had popped the car's safety brake and rolled it down a ramp into John D. Long Lake with the boys still strapped inside. She cried again Friday as she was led from the courtroom after the jury announced its unanimous verdict, reached after just 2 hours of deliberation. The boy's father, David Smith, sat stone-faced, later telling reporters he and his family were disappointed, but it wasn't our choice on what penalty she was to receive. Smith, whose wrenching testimony about losing his sons reduced several jurors to tears, said he could not imagine visiting Smith in jail and was thinking of moving away from Union to escape the memories. I'll never forget what Susan has done to me and my family, even I'd have to say to her family. And I'll never forget Michael and Alex. He said, but forgive, that's something I'm going to have to deal with, I guess, further on down the road. Prosecutor Tommy Pope defended his decision to seek the death penalty, saying he would do it again. This community can begin to heal. Pope said, it's taken a tremendous toll, but it's something that had to be done. Public opinion in Union, a town of 10,000 people, shifted from favoring the death sentence shortly after the crime, growing more sympathetic as Smith's troubled past, including sexual abuse by her stepfather, became known. Smith's lawyer, David Bruck, said there is no good outcome to this case. This case was an awful human tragedy, and it still is, and it always will be. After the verdict, Circuit Judge William Howard told jurors their choice was the toughest moral decision anyone has to make. The jury had taken the same amount of time, July 22, to convict Smith of murder. We all felt like Susan was a really disturbed person, and we all felt that giving her the death penalty wouldn't serve justice, said juror Deborah Benvenuti. Smith, 23, didn't testify during her trial and declined to make a statement to jurors before their deliberations began. She was put on suicide watch in a cell monitored by closed-circuit television and with a guard walking past every 15 minutes, prison spokesman Robin Zimmerman said. For the first few days, she will not be allowed visitors. In his closing argument in the penalty phase of the trial, Bruck said Smith's grief, remorse, and memories while serving life behind bars would be torment enough. This young woman is in a lake of fire. Bruck said, that's her punishment. Holding a Bible, Bruck read the story from the Gospel of John about a woman who committed adultery, an offense punishable by stoning to death. He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Bruck read, the Pope told juror Smith's remorse for killing her only children, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex, was meaningless. She may be sorry now, he said, his voice rising. But was she sorry when she dropped that handbrake down? The crowd that gathered in front of the courthouse to hear the verdict was split in their views of the case. She's crying out for help. She just needs help. If they'd given Susan the death chair, it wouldn't bring those boys back, said Christine Bird, 56. Holly Tater, who was also in the crowd, said the death sentence would have been more just. What she did was wrong, and she planned it all along. She was pleading to the whole nation and lying all along. There was never any doubt about Smith's guilt. Her trial, which began July 10, was to explore why she killed the boys October 25 and how she would be punished. Bruck argued during the trial that Smith snapped under unbearable personal pressures and mental illness. Smith's father, Harry Vaughn, killed himself when she was 6, and defense lawyers said she also was prone to depression and had attempted suicide several times. Pope told the jury Smith killed her son so she could try to continue a relationship with a boyfriend. He was the son of the owner of the plant where she worked and once told her he wasn't ready to be a father. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, for Susan Smith, the love for herself was greater than her love for those boys. Pope said. The prosecution showed jurors a videotape reenactment of the crime in which it took Smith's car 6 minutes to sink with the boys strapped inside. The defense psychiatrist testified that after Smith left his wife in August 1994, she became increasingly depressed. Among them was her stepfather, Beverly Russell, who admitted molesting her when she was 16 and to having sexual relations with her as recently as August. On Thursday, he took the witness stand and tearfully took partial responsibility for what happened to the boys. Bruck said after the verdict that Smith still wants to die. I think Susan is still suicidal. He said, she still puts on a brave front. But yes, underneath the exterior of I'm all right, I think there's great anguish and desire for relief from her pain.
The Union County mother convicted of killing her 2 sons and blaming a black man is now asking for a new trial 15 years later.
Smith isn't denying her guilt. In a handwritten petition, she says she didn't get a fair trial.
For starters, Smith is alleging that her Amanda rights were violated. Police call them Miranda rights. That's basically your right to remain silent. She also alleges that she didn't have adequate representation. She alleges prosecutorial misconduct, but the solicitor isn't too concerned that this is going to wind up back in court because he says the statute of limitations on this particular motion expired 14 years ago.
I would like to say to whoever has my children.
Susan Smith, the same woman who begged for the safe return of her 2 young sons, then turned around and confessed to killing them in 1994, is now, in her own words, painting herself as a victim of the justice system. 15 years after being sentenced to life in prison for the murders, Smith has filed a motion requesting a new trial.
Makes me sick to my stomach. I'm a mother. I cannot fathom any mother doing that for any reason whatsoever.
In December, a similar motion was dismissed in federal court. In a 6-page brief, Smith alleges inadequate representation. She says her attorney never filed an appeal. She also says prosecutors knew she was questioned without an attorney present, which she says violated her Miranda rights.
A number of the issues that she's raised in this post-conviction relief are appellate issues that she should have raised on direct appeal after the trial. So, they're not appropriate for this sort of thing. I think there's a number of problems with the application.
Smith also alleges her 14th Amendment was violated because the jury never got to hear that she may have been suffering from battered woman syndrome.
Battered spouse syndrome has absolutely nothing to do with this case. There's no way it could possibly have been a defense to murdering your children. She has a right to a fair trial. She has a right to have her trial reviewed. But David Smith and the people of Union have a right to expect that one day they're going to be able to put this behind them and forget all about Susan Smith, and their rights are being violated with this petition.
The South Carolina Attorney General's office will now decide if, in fact, Smith will get another day in court. She's currently being incarcerated in Greenwood.
Smith was sentenced to serve a minimum of 30 years in prison. She is not eligible for parole until November 2024.
Caught paying off fellow inmates to play guard while she, Susan Smith, enjoys sex romps with prison girlfriends in cells, closets, even the jailhouse freezer. And to top it all off, she's scamming money online.
The National Enquirer is claiming Susan Smith, the woman who drowned her 2 young sons,
Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months.
There's not 1 minute that goes by that I don't think about these boys.
is having wild sexual trysts in prison.
My heart is it just aches so bad.
Other inmates come forward saying Susan Smith is living the high life in jail, making money off of men who support her.
Okay, I don't really know how to start this off, but who is Big Daddy? That's my first question.
Oh, Big Daddy is a female. Her name is, and she was a bank robber, I believe. And she was the favorite lover of Susan Smith because she was, well, just what Susan liked. She likes them big, strong, who look like men and can make love like men. And unfortunately, Big Daddy got paroled, I guess, and got out of jail. So she was devastated. But she picked up, right now she's going with, who's a 38-year-old female bank robber who also is very masculine looking. And the inmate that we talked to, I won't name her, she was paid to watch for guards, as you said, while she would make love, while Susan Smith would make love with in their cells, closets, and even the prison cafeteria freezer. I bet that was a quickie, the freezer.
Mike Walker, we just played sound of Susan Smith, the original top mom killer, who ran her 2 little boys. Let's pull that video up, please, Liz. Who ran her 2 little boys into a lake in the car, still strapped into their car seats. I will never forget this image when it happened. Then Susan Smith, tearfully going on air, takes to the airways, crying, trying to blame some guy, and a guy nobody knew, nobody had seen, for taking her children. No motive, no sex attack, no robbery, nothing. She walks off without a scratch on her, and the 2 boys are dead at the bottom of a lake. We later find out she did it because she wanted to be with a rich boyfriend, and he didn't want a ready-made family. That's that story. She just said not 1 minute goes by that I don't think about my boys. Apparently, Mike Walker, that's not true.
Well, no, plenty of times go by when she doesn't think about those boys, when she's with all these lovers. She also, made love to prison guards, men. That's what got her into her present correctional institution, a much tougher institution, Leith Correctional Institute. And what she's doing a lot is, she started out, Nancy, I don't know if you know this, she put an ad on a writeprisoners.com website. And she wrote this wonderful thing about how she wanted to correspond with people. And she wrote about her love of, quote, rainbows, Mickey Mouse, the beach, the mountains, and waterfalls. My favorite color is navy blue, and my favorite flower is the daisy. All very sweet. This is a woman.
Okay, please stop.
The death penalty wasn't the verdict. The jury, again, we respect that they took a testimony among themselves and they came back with the verdict of life.
David Smith is with us as well. We are rejoined by attorney Lisa Bloom. She is the author of Think. Now, David, I apologize for dragging you through all this again. I hope you're okay with this. But,
I am. Thank you.
Okay. What was it like? You know, we're now, all of us are focused on the Anthonys and their family at the center of this media scrutiny. What was that like when you were going through it?
It's very stressful. It's very emotionally draining.
Were you ever the subject of scrutiny? Did they try to put any blame over onto you the way they're doing with George Anthony?
Some at first. They did a little, but not very much.
And then to be lied to by your wife so, let's call it vividly, so unabashedly.
Right.
How do you make sense of that? How did you? To me, that's just baffling. It just sort of, you have to shake your head. You still feel like that, or does it make sense now?
Oh, no. I still don't understand today any more than I did then. I mean, Susan was the last person I thought would have ever, harm Michael and Alex.
Well, that's my question. Was there evidence? I mean, there's a lot of similarities between Susan and Casey, right?
Yes.
Do you see those similarities?
See some of them.
Well, why don't you share with me what you see as the similarities?
Well, the partying, Susan was doing a lot of partying there towards the end.
And she actually was having an affair or something, right? Is that true?
Yes, that's correct.
And so Casey, same thing, partying, lying, lies seem to be at the center of all this. Okay.
Correct.
But before that, did she show any evidence did she hurt anybody before that? Did she lie repeatedly before that? Was she using drugs and alcohol before things unraveled?
Dr. Drew, there weren't any signs. There was nothing that I could have seen, that I saw, that would have led me to think she would have ever done what she did. She was a great mother up to the moment that she killed Michael.
Well, there's another similarity with what they're saying about Casey, potentially, interestingly. Do you talk to her now, Susan?
No, I don't.
Does anyone that do speak with her, does she have any insight into what happened? Do you know?
I don't know of anybody who has spoken with her.
Is your sense that she's just a psychopath or a sociopath and really had no feelings, at least in that moment?
I think she was just, she was very selfish.
Selfish to the point of killing children is something specially, you need a special word for that. Selfish doesn't quite apply. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Lisa, let me ask you, you deal with criminals, and this is really what we're talking about here. I mean, we toss around a lot of terminology when people discuss Casey Anthony, talk about sociopath, psychopath, name psychopath. That's all just come up in here in reference to Susan. But ultimately, we're talking about criminals.
We're talking about people who don't have a conscience, right? You or
that's a
I
criminal.
might think evil thoughts, but we don't act on it. Something stops us, and that something is our conscience.
Well, in my world, we think of that as the ability to appreciate that other people's have feelings and agency. Other people exist.
Right. Compassion for other people. Right.
And what's strange to me is that in Casey and Susan's case, it seemed to people around them, you're smiling a little bit. It seemed like she had compassion. When you married her, that's what you thought.
Right, absolutely.
You thought this was a woman who could love me. It felt like love.
Yes, and someone that was, a very caring, loving mother, all that.
15 years later, even Oprah wants to know more. She was recently turned down for a jailhouse interview with Susan Smith. It's a life-changing pain David Smith has to live with every day. He agreed to dig up the past today to help investigators.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
The murders of young Michael and Alex Smith will never be forgotten in the upstate. In 1994, their mother lied to the country, saying her car was stolen with the boys still inside. The frantic search ended when investigators proved the grieving mother was really the one to blame. It's a painful story investigators are still trying to learn from more than 15 years later. For the first time, though, their teacher is the man who lived through it all, the boy's father, David Smith.
Please, as law enforcement, don't shy away. Don't feel intimidated by the parents and hinder, the investigation. Please ask those important questions.
Smith reopened his old wounds, talking about what it was like to be under the microscope.
Part of me was kind of a little frustrated because I wanted every available officer out there looking for Michael and Alex. And I was like, well, you're wasting time interviewing me. Or, as I thought at that time too, Susan.
He says what happened to his family is the reason why investigators can never back down. But he says to get to the truth, they'll have to use compassion.
Asking me, do I know where Michael and Alex is at? That hurt. But I knew they had to, ask that. They had to do their job. And that's what I want law enforcement to do, is just remember that they have to ask those tough questions.
David says he's only spoken to Susan once since the trial.
It took many years. It took a long time, but I finally forgiven her, because not forgiving her, that was eating me up.
As for Oprah's request for a sit-down with Susan in jail,
To me, she just needs to go away, per se. So, if Oprah wants to talk to Susan, I guess, from a media point of view, I can understand that. But from a personal point, I don't agree with it.
Wanted to try to correspond with her in prison, and wanted to know her side of the story. We wanted to know what she thought about it 20 years later. Has her opinions changed to what she did? Is she remorseful? That sort of thing. So what I did was I wrote a letter. I met with my editors, and we formed this letter that asked her those exact questions. And then in January of 2015, she wrote back. Mr. Cahill, I am not the monster society thinks I am. I'm far from it. Something went very wrong that night. I was not myself. I was a good mother, and I loved my boys. You want to know, why did you do this? And hopefully you get some kind of insight as to what goes on in the mind of a criminal, so that tips and hints that they give you, that they lay down, that they work as a foundation for other criminals, you might have the chance to prevent something in the future.
We got in the car, we drove up to Union. I remember going to the sheriff's office first, and thankfully I had interacted and knew the head of SLED, Chief Stewart back then, and so he told me they were getting ready to fly John D. Long Lake.
It just seems so unfair that somebody could take such two beautiful children.
She said that she was stopped at a traffic light at around 9 o'clock at night, and that while she was stopped at a light, a man jumped in the car and forced her to drive, got her out of the car, and goes away with her children.
They were screaming, hollering, crying, and I'm just scared that he just lost his patience or something.
At that point, we thought it was an abduction. We had no reason to believe that a family member would have been involved.
As I remembered, it was the lead story on our evening newscast. The last sentence of her story was, this is almost verbatim, authorities are not ruling out anyone as a suspect, including the mother.
Your hearts just feel heavy, for the things that's going on. And like I say, nothing has ever happened like this in Union before.
The reason why I remember it so well is I spent the next hour to 2 hours with viewers screaming at me. How dare you? How dare you? That poor woman She's had her 2 little babies kidnapped. And you would suggest that she might have been responsible?
This story touches most every listener, and knowing that the media have plugged into Union County. Outside the sheriff's office, news vehicles and high-dollar satellite.
I couldn't believe how many reporters from all over the country were already there. It captivated the heart of the nation and the heart of the world, just like that.
I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't walk down the street. I couldn't go in the restaurant. I couldn't go in the bathroom. And somebody was saying, what's the latest on the Susan Smith story? What's the latest on have they found those little boys?
Please bring them home.
So this didn't happen to strangers. This happened to people that most everyone knew. So, and of course, everybody's out looking. They all want to find these little boys.
Out in their way, this black guy came up and just opened the door and jumped in the car.
So they had this sketch, and the sketch was up everywhere. And so everybody was looking for not only the car, the boys, but that man.
A dialogue started in the newsroom of this composite is so generic. Do we continue to use it? And the newsroom decided to stop using that.
What was interesting about the sketch is most people tell you detail first and then broaden out to more global information. In her case, it was global without many details.
Because you want to say, well, anything is better than nothing, right? But not necessarily so if it's going to identify 900 people in a 5-mile square area.
There were people riding around here with rifles in the back of the trucks, shotguns in the back of the trucks. And I'm sure there were numerous people riding around with the pistols in the car.
David Smith looked like a guy who someone had kidnapped his kid. Susan Smith looked like someone who was excited for the media attention.
They've told NBC that there were inconsistencies in your stories. Do you know what inconsistencies they were referring to?
No, ma'am, I really do not know that.
Search intensifies. Both Susan and David take polygraph tests. An investigator confronts Susan, demanding to know why she killed her children. She storms out of the room, jeopardizing Wells's investigation.
And it took almost 6 minutes or thereabouts for the car to sink. And again, the car basically turned it over. And then what happens, you start seeing water coming up ultimately in the floorboard, through the vents. And I mean, it just comes up and ultimately covers the camera. You could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. I heard a noise, and it was almost like a giggle, and I look over at Susan Smith, and like the law clerk for the defense are writing notes or playing tic-tac-toe, and she's giggling or whatever, while this is playing, and the jury's out. So the jury comes in, and I hear a noise from the other side of the courtroom. And yes, this time Susan was crying.
Guilty of murder on both counts in the deaths of sons Alex and Michael.
Today, Susan Smith was sentenced for drowning her sons in a Union County lake.
Here at John D. Long Lake, this is the memorial for Michael and Alex Smith. It is just feet from the lake where they died. In this letter sent to a reporter at the state newspaper, their mother, Susan Smith, wrote, quote, "I am not the monster society thinks I am. I am far from it. I was a good mother, and I loved my boys."
She has always kind of taken a self-centered focus over the years.
Tommy Pope was the prosecutor who tried the Susan Smith case 20 years ago.
Somewhere in my obituary, they're going to say he's that guy that prosecuted Susan Smith.
Smith's letter was a response to one she got from the state newspaper. Smith wrote in part, quote, "The thing that hurts me the most is that people think I hurt my children in order to be with a man. That is so far from the truth. I was not in my right mind."
If you look at the letter, it's still more about her, not about Michael and Alex, not about the regrets of the crime.
Pope says he doesn't talk about the case anymore unless he's asked about it. He considers the trial a loss because Smith didn't get the death penalty.
For me, it's kind of odd that I'm most famous for something that I don't think is my greatest accomplishment.
Smith's defense attorneys, David Bruck and Judy Clark, are still working on high-profile cases. Most recently, Boston Marathon bombing suspect Johar Tsarnaev. The sheriff at the time, Howard Wells, ended up behind bars himself following a 2010 investigation into public corruption. As for Pope, he's in private practice, serves in the State House, and plans on a 2018 run for governor. But but he predicts more discussion on Smith, given the fact that parole will eventually be enough.
To a usually quiet town, and it lured thousands to the tip of John D. Long Lake. Susan Smith drowning her two young boys, Alex and Michael, in that lake in Union County. But the 1994 murders would not be the last horror to take place. 2 years later, a family of 7 drowned in that same spot while visiting the memorial for the Smith boys. Tonight, we have the stories of 2 men who played an instrumental role in both tragedies and how they are coping more than 20 years.
Tim Baxley and Steve Murrow were both members of the Department of Natural Resources Aquatic Investigation and Recovery Team. But what most people don't know is the same dive team that recovered the Smith boys was called back to this very spot just 2 years later to recover the bodies of 7 more victims, 4 of those children. In 1994, Susan Smith initially told investigators she was carjacked, the suspect making off with her 2 boys, Michael, 3, and Alex, 14 months, still in the back seat.
When he made me get out of the car, I tried to get my children. I just begged them, please let me take them.
That prompted officials to call in the DNR's dive team to canvass nearby bodies of water.
We didn't ask a lot of questions, but we knew we were looking for a car or we were looking for bodies.
Tim Baxley joined the dive team in 1990 and admits it's not for everyone.
It was a very tough job. Like I say, it's not recreational diving. This is a mission that, and you really have to have a calling for it to do it.
After sweeping the shoreline of the lake, the search turned up nothing. Baxley and the rest of the team left Union and returned to their daily routines. That was until they received a call from Steve Murrow on November 4th, 9 days after that initial search.
Another one of the divers and I went out and actually laid hands on the car and determined that the bodies were inside.
The team turned the car over to investigators to examine further. Murrow says a lot of tears were shed that night.
I went home and I had about a 4.5-year-old son, and I went home and told my wife. I don't think we spoke. If we did, I don't remember. And then I went and got in bed with him and played the rest of the night.
But the trauma didn't stop there. 2 years later, Murrow and Baxley were called back to the exact same location. This time, the recovery mission involved 7 victims.
Just looked like it's got a bad omen.
They had stopped to look at the monuments for the Smith boys when their car rolled down the boat ramp into the water.
That was a very traumatic experience to hold in, but you man up and you be the tough guy.
Following the 1996 drownings, law enforcement officials began recognizing a need for an outlet for those involved in traumatic experiences. Murrow says he did not initially see post-traumatic stress, but it came through with the help of the program known as SC LEAP.
My wife and I had lost an infant prior to this, and I was having trouble dealing with the fact that we wanted one and lost it, and these people are just giving them up.
Following his breakthrough, Murrow became a counselor as a member of the SC LEAP peer group.
Nobody is that hard and callous that they can just deal with it.
After 96, we've had many more tragedies that have happened. They may not have been the magnitude of these, but they were a whole lot easier to deal with because we had somebody there, you had somebody you could talk to.
The first night when the sheriff called and asked for assistance, we sent a team over, and one of the first agents that went over was a forensic artist who works with an alleged victim and does a pretty good interview, and as well as doing the artist sketch. And when he completed his work that night, he pretty much indicated that he thought there were some problems with Susan Smith's story.
So that was Bob Stewart just a few years ago, I believe, on the 20th anniversary of all of this. This sparked, as you might imagine, a lot of outrage, not only in Union County where this happened, all across the state of South Carolina and nationwide. People were outraged that this woman could come forward and tell such a lie and put people in such an uproar. So she says there's no motive, but the prosecutor said there was a motive here.
And what was that?
A 23-year-old Susan Smith wanted to have a relationship with a wealthy man in Union County, a man who had told her he didn't want a family. And for that reason, they say she strapped her children inside the car and rolled it in John D. Long Lake. So that's the motive that prosecutors used. There was some thought that they were going to try and get the death penalty here. David Bruck, a high-profile attorney, took the case, trying to keep her off death row. Instead, she got those 30 years. But as you heard a few moments ago, she could be eligible for parole in 5 years.
Now, I know you have followed this story. Do you know anything about her time in prison? What can you tell us?
I know she hasn't been the model prisoner. She has been written up at least 5 times on various charges. There's drug use. Also, she had sexual relations with 2 correctional officers. That was when she was housed here in Columbia. She has since been moved to Greenwood. So when her probation hearing comes up in a few years from now, all these things that have happened will come back and they'll look at it and they'll decide then.
You were in the courtroom during the trial. Talk to me about
who Susan Smith was in that courtroom?
We heard a lot about Susan Smith inside that courtroom, some of it very disturbing testimony. We heard that she tried to commit suicide at the age of 13. She tried to commit suicide at the age of 18. She was sexually molested by a member of her own family for many years. Her father killed himself when she was only 6 years old. So the defense here tried to tell the jury, look, this woman has some mental issues. This woman has some problems. This woman doesn't deserve the death penalty. This woman doesn't deserve to die for these crimes because she's pretty messed up.
I kind of have a feeling there will be public outrage when she's up for parole, and that the public will have something to say about it.
Probably so. And it could be that the offenses that she has committed behind bars might come back to bite her when it comes for probation time. So there's no guarantee she's going to get probation, but she certainly will probably be asking for that in about 5 years. Interesting, the players in this case, what's happened to them over the last 25 years. As we mentioned, David Smith remarried. He has 2 kids. The prosecutor, Tommy Pope, is now a House representative representing Union County in the State House here in South Carolina. The sheriff, the man who said Susan Smith has been arrested and charged, he served 90 days in prison. He got caught up in a federal corruption probe. As for David Bruck, he's 70, and he is still trying to keep people off of death row. He takes cases each and every day. But John D. Long Lake, that the ramp, it's been closed because 2 years after all of this happened, 7 people drowned one night. They went to that very same boat ramp. The car went back into the water. Among the 7 dead, several children. So they just made the decision, let's shut that boat ramp down. We'll move the memorial for the children here. We'll make it safer for people who want to come and pay respect.
Susan Smith has more than a year to go before her first parole hearing, but she is starting to ask some of her relatives to help her get out of prison. She needs to show that she has something here, on the outside, says a family member. So she wants affidavits from us to basically vouch that she's got a support system at home. But will any of her family vouch for her? Right as of now, no. Says the family member. I don't think anyone is going to be willing to help her. We're still hurting 30 years later about Michael and Alex. I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you that I'm not interested in helping her get out. Smith has struggled with her behavior behind bars. In 2000, she was disciplined for having sex with a prison guard. Then, according to prison records obtained by the Messenger, Smith faced disciplinary action at least 5 times between 2010 and 2015 for various infractions, including self-mutilation and the use and possession of narcotics or marijuana. But more recently, Smith has cleaned up her act presumably in the hopes that she'll be granted parole. Susan Smith, who is serving a life sentence for the 1994 murders of her children, has a plan if she is successful in next year's parole bid. She wants to visit the gravesite of her 2 sons. She's never been there, says one of her relatives, who is in touch with Smith behind bars. She feels like going there would be closure for her. But not everyone is happy with her plans to visit the gravesite. A relative of David Smith says that it's an outrage to expect her to pay her respects to the boys she killed. They would be grown men with families of their own by now, says the Smith relative. She took their entire life from them, and now she wants to go visit them? It's ridiculous. Susan Smith has long insisted that she was mentally ill when she killed her children but that she wasn't a bad mom. Smith's parole hearing will be held on November 4, 2024.
Here is a timeline of those events. October 17, 1994, Tom Findley, son of the owner of the Cosno textile mill where Susan Smith was a secretary, writes a letter to Smith breaking off their affair. Findley said in the letter he didn't want children. October 25, 1994, Smith straps 14-month-old Alex and 3-year-old Michael into her burgundy 1990 Mazda Protege and uses the access ramp to John D. Long Lake to push the car into the water. October 25, 1994, Smith reports to local police that a black man carjacked her at gunpoint with her 2 small children in the back of her car. October 27, 1994, Smith was to come to the Union County Sheriff's Office, in the county courthouse, to be interviewed by an FBI polygraph operator. November 2, 1994, Smith and her estranged husband, David, appear on national television, pleading for the safe return of their children. November 3, 1994, Smith confesses to police investigators at a local church to drowning Alex and Michael after she strapped them into the back seat of her car and pushed it into the lake. November 3, 1994, Department of Natural Resources divers recover Smith's car from the lake, with the bodies of Michael and Alex inside. November 3, 1994, Union County Sheriff Howard Wells holds a press conference informing the nation that Smith was charged with 2 counts of murder in the drowning deaths of her children. November 6, 1994, hundreds of mourners turn out for Michael and Alex's wake and funeral. Their bodies were placed in the same casket. December 12, 1994, Smith is indicted on 2 charges of murder. January 16, 1995, 16th Circuit Solicitor Tommy Pope announces his decision to pursue the death penalty. July 10, 1994, jury selection begins. 9 men and 3 women are chosen, 4 black, 8 white, all from Union County. July 22, 1995, the jury finds Smith guilty on 2 counts of murder. July 24, 1995, the penalty phase of the trial begins. July 26, 1995. David Smith testifies against his ex-wife in heart-wrenching testimony. July 28, 1995. Smith is sentenced to life in prison and is taken to prison. September 11, 2000. Smith is found guilty of sexual misconduct for engaging in sexual acts with 2 prison guards while incarcerated. 2 lawyers have gone on to make headlines after the Susan Smith trial. Judy Clark, with attorney David Bruck, Clark helped convince jurors that Smith was a fragile victim of sexual abuse who should not be executed. Clark went on to spare the Unabomber from the death penalty, too, though Ted Kaczynski never forgave her for trying to make him look insane. More recently, she did not manage to save Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev from the death penalty. She also represented Olympics bomber Eric Rudolph and Jared Launer, who tried to assassinate Representative Gabrielle Giffords and killed 6 others.
Well, that was interesting, huh?
Very.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in there.
You know, one thing that really chapped me was everybody has their own beliefs, their own religion. I don't knock anybody's religion, okay? But
Right.
when he used the saying from John 8, verse 7, let he without sin cast the first stone,
Mm-hmm.
that was about adultery in the Bible. That wasn't about murder. It wasn't saying that, you know, just because you committed adultery or you robbed a bank or you did that or you did this, that you can't cast a stone at somebody who committed murder.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of far-fetched too, that he would use that. But she wasn't committing adultery with Tom Finlay.
Right.
They were separated and they weren't even living together. Actually, they were in a divorce. Divorce was granted before trial, well before the murders. So I don't know why he pulled that one out there.
I think that was
know.
just a manipulative tactic for the defense attorney. I know he's got to do what he's got to do to save his client because everybody deserves due process and has a right to have a fair trial. But I think using that was pretty really
Yeah.
out there.
It really
Shouldn't have.
was.
I was like, really? What does that have to do with her murdering her 2 babies?
Well, it's because her ex-husband cheated on her is the way that it sounds to me. That's why she did it. Even though she was cheating on him to start off with. You know,
Well, they were both.
Yeah, they both were, but
they're both playing
he
house
was
with
basically
everybody. So.
saying that for
Everybody,
him,
including family.
for him, he was using that saying to keep them from casting her to death penalty. That's what he used that for. He
It
flipped
is.
it, and it drives me crazy when people flip Bible verses to suit what they want it to suit.
And that happens so often. I mean,
It does.
more often than not, especially back in, I don't know, even a decade ago, it was used a lot in court, like pulling the Bible out and reading verses much. It was used a lot, especially when you're dealing with cases that involves any sort of religion. And here we had hardcore religious people on both sides of the family, separate religions, but they were all religious nonetheless, highly religious.
Very much so. I just didn't like that part. I thought that was
Yeah,
I thought
I'm
that
glad
was
you brought it
low
up.
of the attorney to do that. That bothered me. And even in the book that I read, even the author of that book, I can't remember which one, did not agree with what he said either.
Mm-hmm. Well, the defense pulled one hell of a job. I'm just saying they did a good job.
They really did.
These Brock, the main one that gives the closing arguments, and he done a hell of a job, and he was very expensive. And you know who paid for him for Susan? Bev paid for him, mortgaged his house and everything. And I'm talking about 30 years ago that, it was costing him, oh God, hundreds of thousands to have Brooke and Judy, well-known attorneys. And honestly, they won. They did. I mean, she didn't get the death penalty. See, that's the only thing this trial was about. It wasn't guilt or innocence because she confessed.
Right.
This
It was
trial
about her
was
sentencing.
right. It was about, was she going to be executed or get life? And actually, the defense won because she didn't get the death penalty, which is what the prosecution was going for. So, also, you know, like I said earlier, I do have those closing arguments. I was able to find those, and I'm going to go ahead. They're already uploaded to the channel. I'll go ahead and make them public after this live. That way, any of you that want to hear those closing arguments, you can listen to them there. They're read out. And of course, because you could not take any kind of recording or anything into the trial, I think the first televised trial, if I'm not mistaken, was Pam Smart, which, by the way, is another skanker. I think she was the first American televised trial. Am I right? I'm pretty sure.
I'm not
she was.
sure. I think you're right, but I
think so.
I think so.
But
I personally think that trials should be televised. It should be, because the public gets so involved in the cases that we should be able to see what's going on in court. You know,
I agree. And in Alabama, you can't even bring nothing into a courtroom. Literally nothing. You can bring a pad and paper, and that's it. There's literally nothing else.
But I think they should televise it. And I watch Emily Baker, and she agrees. She thinks that they should be televised as well. And she is an attorney that used to be a prosecuting attorney as well. For 17 years, she's been, you know, an attorney.
Yeah. Well, so what is everybody in the chat? We got like nearly 90 in here. What do you think? Was Susan just a cold-blooded, gold-digging piece of trash, or was she a mentally broken woman that couldn't handle life? Like A or B? Put it in the chat. Let me see what you think, because this is one of those torn cases. People are torn about it. Like, they believe she was failed since childhood. You know, her dad killing himself, and then her mom getting married to a guy that's molesting her. Her mom tells her to shut her mouth. Don't tell nobody. You're not supposed to tell when you have issues. You keep that to yourself. And I don't know. It's a torn case.
So what was A and B again? A was what?
A, was she just a cold-blooded, gold-digging skank? Or B, was she just failed all of her life, totally unstable, and should have never had the kids to begin with? You know.
Well,
yeah,
is it okay if I say for myself, or you want me to wait until they're done? For myself, it's part A and part B, because she cold-bloodedly murdered those kids. She watched those kids cry and beg for her, mommy, come get, mommy, mommy, mommy. That's why she closed her eyes and covered her ears, I believe. But she also had mental issues, and she stated again several times that ways that she thought of harming her children and harming herself. But there's a lot of us that have been through traumatic things in our life. Some of us have been the R word. Some of us have been SA'd. Some of us have been physically beaten by significant others, but we didn't choose to murder our children or murder anyone else. I get that the system failed her, but when she got older, did she reach out to anybody? She knew it was wrong. She knew right from wrong.
But so did the people around her knew that too, but nobody seemed to do anything about it but laugh at her and take advantage of her. Because all these guys that she's sleeping with, they would obviously know there's something wrong with her.
Daddy issues. Oh my
That's right.
gosh.
That's
Oh
exactly
my
what she
God.
had, was daddy issues.
If
But
you noticed when she went to prison, these guards she was having these relationships with too, to get what she wanted from the outside. Look how old they were. You know, they were like double her age.
Mhm.
The man she had the affair with at Winn-Dixie before she met David, he was a married man with kids. She actually got pregnant by him and got an abortion. And when he broke up with her, she tried to kill herself. So she had this history of every time she was rejected by a man, she tried to kill herself.
I
And with
think that was a cry for attention, for them to
yes,
be like, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm not going to, I think that's what she was looking for, was them to come back and rescue her.
it's like she searched for love forever. And I don't know what the situation is, but her children should have been that love, that unconditional love
Mm-hmm.
that she would never have. But she looked farther than that, and that's why I said daddy issues. It's
If she just would have looked at what God gave her, he gave her 2 boys that would unconditionally love her for the rest of her life.
absolutely.
The only thing is, though, it's like she is a sex addict, though. So she couldn't get that from her boys.
Was she though? Or was it that she thought that's the only way she could get male's
See, that's what
attention?
I think, is that she used sex as a way to get the attention. I don't think she was a sex addict. I
know,
think
it's
she
hard to
used
say.
sex to
That's
draw
all she's
them
been doing
in.
in prison, so.
Well, yeah, she's using sex to get what she wants while she's in prison. If she has sex with the guards, they're going to give her what she wants, whatever that may be.
Yeah, but she was having sex with all the girls in there, too. Anybody that looked masculine, by the sounds of things, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that could
But
be
then
for
again, was that for
protection. That could
protection
be
or
to
what?
get what, yes, that's what I think, for protection. And maybe they had commissaries and stuff that she doesn't have access to. And if she became their thing, they would give them to her. I mean, she's very calculating. From the things I've read, she goes after what she wants, and she knows what she wants, and she knows how to manipulate to get what she wants. It's like she turns it off and on, from what
Yes,
I've
and
read.
she uses her body.
Yes.
I don't even know. It's a complicating, sad situation. I tell you what, I'm not gonna lie. I feel sorry for Susan as a child,
Yes, I do. I feel very sad for the little girl
for the
that
little
had to
Susan.
endure all of that abuse
Yes, and
and no
then
one there to help her.
yes, the child Susan that was ignored, the child Susan that was pushed to the side, told to keep your mouth shut, don't tell family affairs. All that Susan is what made the monster Susan.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
the
that is
monster
thanks to her
Susan
mother
deserves,
and her
I think she
stepfather.
deserves the death penalty too. I mean, I just do. She knew better. And you know, there is no excuse for what she did. Um, People can say she was a great mother all day long, and I believe she probably was. So was Chris Watts, right? He was a great father. That does not take away what neither one of them did.
Mm-mm.
You know, there's no excuse. There's none.
At the end of
Susan
the
made
day,
it
they ended their lives and took away a future that those boys could have had. And like they said, those boys would be grown with families of their own right now.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
doing something, there's no telling what they could have become.
absolutely.
But she took that away.
I would never trust Susan. I was shocked to read and find out
That
that
they
she was
trust her with their kids. I
God.
was like, are you kidding me? I had to read that again. I was like, I know I
Yes,
read that wrong. Seriously, that's not right?
unbelievable. Yeah.
Remember I called you saying, what in the Sam heck?
Oh my God.
Are you talking about in prison? Looking
Yes.
after the kids.
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Isn't that
Yes,
crazy?
it's insane. She watched the kids while they were doing their interviews or what have you.
Oh yeah. And did you hear the Tommy Pope, the prosecution, just now in one of his interviews? He said, yeah, while this clip was showing the reenactment of the water, and they even had the little dummy in the back seat and car seats. I mean, they literally did this reenactment spot on, and they said she was sitting over there playing tic-tac-toe with her attorney and laughing while that was playing. Like, what in the hell?
And then when the jury came in, she started to cry.
That is
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Like,
And
she
too
is
bad
a
the
true
jury
saint.
couldn't see that. Too bad the jury didn't get to see her first reaction.
Yeah, they weren't in the room while she was laughing when it first was playing, and they was making sure the tape was going to play fine and everything. No, she was over there laughing. And what makes that even worse is she was laughing during the first playing. And it didn't even like she had saw it before, right? She's not even saw this yet, this reenactment. The first time she's watching it, she's laughing and playing tic-tac-toe.
Do you know how painful it is to drown? Have you ever nearly drowned? Has anyone ever nearly drowned?
Have not. I'm terrified of water.
I won't go on boats anymore because of this incident. We were on the raft where you hold on to the rope and the handlebar on the rope, and you're on the circle raft that's flying and bumping you around and everything.
Yes.
Back then I only weighed like 95 pounds, I think, soaking wet. I was really tiny. And the guy that was driving the boat was like, I'm not going to go as fast as I normally do because you're too little. You'll fling off of here. Well, another boat crossed in front of us, and there was no way to divert from their wake. And we flew over. I lost, my grip on the rope. And of course, I'm screaming, so my mouth is wide open when I hit the water. I go in and I instantly swallow water and start breathing in water. It hurt so bad. And then when they help you get the water out by doing doing the Heimlich and stuff on you, it is very, very painful. So for those kids to go under and be breathing that water, taking in that first breath, I can tell you from personal experience, it's scary, it hurts, and you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have read where drowning is horrific.
Yes, and I haven't been skiing on a boat or done anything like that since. I haven't even been on a boat since then. And back then I was 22 years old when that happened. And nope, never will again.
No.
Never, never, never.
Well,
I had
the
to be
little boys'
taken to the hospital
autopsies.
and get checked out and make sure I was okay and make sure there was no more water in my lungs and that I didn't, because we were in Texas. Galveston water is not the healthiest water. So they
Right.
made sure I didn't have any bacterial infections and put me on an antibiotic just to be safe,
Yeah.
It was
I bet.
traumatic and it hurt. My throat hurt for a good few days after that, and my lungs, it hurt to take a deep breath because of the intake and them pushing on me.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. The little boys, their autopsies showed that they were alive, of course, when they drowned, and the oldest one had tried to unstrap or undo the car seat. One of his little hands was grasped around the car seat, and the other one was smashed against the window where he was trying to get out. And this is what they and that one the one of the divers, Steve Morrow, he is actually the one that found the car and was able to look in and see the babies. And he came up, and it was horrific. He is one of the ones that had to unstrap the babies from the car, put them into the ambulance from the crime scene. And he's had a hell of a hard go with it since. But he still does it. He still does it. He was actually also one of the ones that helped to cover the 7 that happened in 96. That family had went out there to just to see the memorial. They had teddy bears and flowers, and they went there to visit and place the flowers and memorials, out there. And they said that the car one of them was an SUV, just took off. And witnesses says that they never saw any brake lights hit or anything as the SUV went into the water. And then another family member, I think it was family member, right behind them in a car, they took off running to try to help them that was in the SUV, and they drowned as well. But there was 4 kids in that SUV, and 2 of them were in car seats.
That is horrible.
Yeah, and one of them was just an infant that was being babysat by the family.
Do you think that family annihilation is it? I know that families of parent or dads or moms have been killing their families and stuff for a long time, but do you think it's been going on for a long time, or are we now just all of a sudden seeing it more and more often?
Oh yeah, it's been forever. It's been forever, but it just seems to be getting worse, and it seems it's just like it's not even really. I don't know. I don't know. I can't even answer that, Nelly. But yes, it's been going on forever, and it does seem to be getting worse. And like you say, I don't know if it's because we have more information now and things get put out there more. But even doing deep diving into these cases, it seems like children have always, sadly, been one of the top victims of so many crimes. It's children, innocent.
Horrible.
Yes.
When my son was in 6th grade, 6th or 7th grade, there was a house that was over there by the school. And when Brandon got out of school, there was tape all around it, police tape. Every police officer in my little bitty town was there. And on the news, it came out that the wife had murdered the 2 younger kids when they got home, then murdered the junior high kid when he got home, and turned the gun on herself. And the dad came home to find his entire family deceased. And she did it because the husband could no longer handle the way she was treating the children and her disciplinary actions. So he was filing for divorce, and he was going to take custody of the kids. So she killed them and herself so that way he wouldn't have anything. And that's what she left in her note.
Yeah, so many times child custody, that does happen. So if you're not getting my kids, I'll take them both. And a lot of people think maybe that was the situation with this case. It wasn't. Wasn't at all. A lot of people says, why didn't she give the kids to David? He wanted them. No, that wasn't what the divorce said. The divorce was there was not even any argument over custody at all with those two. It was like already set there that she was going to get primary, and of course he was going to get visitation. That's what they both wanted. And she took the kids to Winn-Dixie like almost every day after she picked him up from daycare to see him. You know, that's where he worked. He was a manager. Ironically, oddly enough, now she was David was dating Tiffany while he was married to Susan, and then of course he left Susan and he continued to date Tiffany. And after Susan went to prison, they got married, and then they had a little girl. I think her name was Savannah. Tiffany and David did, and David also has a son that was born from an extramarital affair while he was married to Tiffany. And I think the son is younger. I think he's like 2 or 3 years younger than his and Tiffany's. And him and Tiffany is from only thing I could see, I guess they're still together. But seems like David, you know, he also, and he admitted himself that he was a lousy husband. That was his words. He admitted a few times where he threw Susan around, abusive to her, cheated on her all the time. And he left her and moved back in with his grandma right after they bought their first house. He left her and Michael, and then he came back, and that's when she got pregnant with Alex. And then after Alex was born, Alex was only, I don't know, just a couple months old. He left Susan again and moved back to his grandma's. And it was just constantly back and forth, back and forth. And it seemed like every time Susan was having any kind of breakdown mentally, she would turn to this stepfather of hers. And I mean, they had slept together, you know, less than 2 months before these murders. So she never stopped sleeping with the stepfather. The stepfather, in my opinion, groomed her as a child. He took responsibility for it. He did. But he also threw out there in the trial that, yeah, he did molest her, and he does bear a lot of this while her head's so messed up. But her mom and her decided not to ever press charges against him. So even though there was an investigation, the CPS was aware of it, the school was aware of it, and as I say, the police department came out to do an investigation on this molestation. Since they didn't want to press charges, all of the records were tightly sealed, 100% sealed, and never spoke about again. Which is very unfortunate. That man was a pedophile, and I don't care how you look at it, he was a pedophile.
I'm surprised the DA didn't take it on. You know, like the state, go ahead and just do it.
It does now. It will now. They not then.
Oh,
which is
okay.
ridiculous.
So back then they didn't do it. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So done with it says that hoping to be paroled in 2025. It's actually 2024. November the 4th, 2024 is when she's going up for parole. I don't see her getting it. I hope she doesn't get it.
Me both.
So she has inherited $100,000 from the sale of her mom's house. Yeah, I know she's worth a lot of money. The last I heard, she was worth at least $200,000. So she's well set up, you know. Either way, I mean, in her commissary or whatever, she's set up.
That's so disgusting.
Yeah, I don't think she will either, and I hope she don't. You know, I'm completely on David's side of her never getting out again. She doesn't deserve it, ever. She took those babies' breaths away, okay? She don't deserve to breathe fresh air, in my opinion, either. Does anybody else have any questions? Dave, Nelly, y'all got anything to say?
I've said
Not really.
pretty much what I feel. I
Just
don't
that
think she deserves to be out. I think she deserves to stay in prison. I really think she deserved the death penalty, not this life in prison bull caca.
Oh yeah, if she would have got life, she would have already been executed.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And I think she should have got, if they were going to do life, then life without the possibility of parole. So that way this poor family doesn't have to go through this every so many years, having to go up there and fight why she shouldn't get out. All it does is take those poor people back to that day that they already live in pretty much every day of their life anyway. We've all lost somebody that we love, and we know how we feel just by losing them to cancer or to an automobile accident or to a health condition. We always still mourn that person. Can you imagine how someone feels to have to relive knowing that their babies were murdered by their mother or by their sister, by their daughter? I mean,
I couldn't
that,
look at her. I couldn't
couldn't
see her.
either.
I couldn't look at her.
And I don't think it's fair that these poor people have to go up there to have to fight to keep her butt where it's at because she deserves to be there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm
Mac,
sorry, Dave. I went on a tyrant and interrupted you. Go ahead and say yours. I'm so sorry, sweetie.
it's okay. I forgot.
oh, go ahead, Dave.
No, in most of these cases, it's like everybody remembers like her name and like all these other women that have been killing their kids, but it seems like the kids are forgotten. Like nobody knows their names, and it's very seldom that they'll know that it was either two boys or a boy and a girl or whatever, just that there was kids involved. And it's like, I don't know. I think they should actually spend more when they do talk about these cases, what the kids' names actually were, because they were the
Yes.
ones that are actual victims of this, and nobody knows who they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're the ones that paid the ultimate price. The ultimate price for all the damn dysfunctions in both parents. They pay the ultimate price. And it is so messed up, man. MacJay says, how messed up. I believe she's talking about the stepfather here. I believe Susan was groomed. I don't believe it happened when she was 15 only. I believe this man could have been grooming her since she was 6.5, 7 years old.
Me too.
She supposedly, now this is the story that her and her mom and even him eventually told was that when Susan was 15, that's when this started. However, when it was said, how did this ever even start? How did it even start, right? It was claimed that when Susan was 15 years old, see, her stepdad, Bev, has 3 other children from a prior marriage, all females. So one of the female daughters came and spent the night with them one night. And they gave her Susan's bedroom. So Susan was left to sleep on the living room couch. And it was said that while she was laying on the living room couch, her stepdad, Bev, was at the other end of the couch. And instead of asking him to get up and move, she just got over there and sat down in his lap and acted like she fell asleep on his chest. Now, this is when she was 15 years old. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. What 15-year-old jumps up in her stepdad's lap, lays her head on his chest, and goes to sleep? Now, that I can see, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 years old, whatever, but 15.
Not a chance.
So there was, in my opinion, there was something going on before that time. Now, she told her mom, and this is when her mom became aware, or so they say, of the molestation is when she was 15. But they told the mom that what happened was she fell asleep in his lap, and she felt him under her shirt, fondling her. And then he had taken her hand and placed it on him. And she said she continued to act like she was asleep while this was happening. And she told her mom the reason that she didn't stop him was because she wanted to see how far he would take it. And then the next morning is when she went to school and told the guidance counselor, who in turn told her she needed to go home and tell her mother. And the guidance counselor, of course, contacted CPS, who contacted the police department. Mom jumped on her. You can't do this. You're going to destroy our family. You can't be telling people stuff like this. I mean, why did you sit there and let him do that? And even as she got older, like even when she was 17, 18, when she was 18, she finally admitted to her therapist, and yes, she was having to have counseling for this. She finally admitted to the therapist that the sex she was having with her stepfather was totally consensual now. And so the therapist asked her why is this happening? This is your stepfather. Why are you allowing this? And why are you saying it's consensual? And she said, well, it is consensual. She said, the thing of it is to be honest, and this is Susan telling the therapist, she said, to be honest, I believe I deserve as much attention from him as my mom does. And if we're not having sex, then I'm not getting the attention from him that I deserve. Now, that's Susan telling the therapist this at 18 years old. Okay, so you can't tell me that her mind, obviously she wasn't right, but why was she competing with her mom for attention from the stepfather? And why did she think that getting his attention meant having sex with him? Okay.
Well, that goes back to being groomed, but to me, the whole thing is it's almost like the mother let this all happen in order to keep her husband. Otherwise, he would leave her for somebody else.
Absolutely.
So she just let everything happen. So
yeah, the mother's big to blame here, in my opinion. Now, she wrote a book. I haven't read her book, but I'm going to. I want to know what her story was.
The mother's book, I don't think I can read it because I don't want to hear her bullshit excuses.
Yeah, I blame Susan's mom a lot. She was, I don't know, I know you read this, Nelly, but another thing that really upset me about the mom was, okay, you remember us talking about David's brother died 11 days before the wedding.
Right.
11 days. And he was buried at that, his funeral was at that one church that we talked about. Okay. David's family was grieving. Think about it. The dad even tried to take its own life, right? They were grieving hard over their son that just passed away. Susan's mother was like, no, I have already put too much money into this wedding. I have already invitations out, all this planned. No, the wedding's going to go on. I'm sorry, that you had a funeral like 9 days ago. But we're going to go ahead with this wedding.
And you know who that reminded me of?
That's so messed up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're grieving.
They're grieving their child's death.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
And
a wedding
Susan's
is the
mom will
last thing they care about right now.
Exactly. And Susan's mom's like, no, we're going to have the wedding, whether y'all show up or not. We're going to have it. Well, as we said, his family did show up, but mom stayed outside because it was a Methodist church. And that had nothing to do with the grieving part. It was just she wouldn't even go into the grandson's funerals either.
And I'm sure had they called the church and the venue and let them know what happened, they would have probably accommodated them. Yes, they may have charged a little bit extra for having to, move things around and having another wedding at that point. But he died 8 days before the wedding. In 8 days, they could have called somebody else to take over that wedding.
Exactly.
All she had to do was call and say, look, and the groom's brother unexpectedly died. We need to move this wedding. And I'm sure
Right.
they would have accommodated her.
You know they would have. Even the whoever catered it and things like that, totally understood. I mean, but
I mean, there's some things that are just out of your control.
yeah, it's just like both families had their own sets of issues. I mean, think about it. Susan Smith is also David's stepmother's name, right? Her name's Susan too, and she committed suicide too. I mean, she 2 years, I think it was, after Michael and Alex, she committed suicide, and his dad had tried to commit suicide, and Susan had tried to commit suicide numerous of times, and the molestation, and the mom defending the stepdad, and then her continuing this relationship with the stepfather up to a month, just a little over a month before she murdered the kids. It's like, oh my God, it's just so dysfunctional. Good Lord, there was nothing good going to come of anything there.
That almost sounds like the Wells too.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, how do you even wrap your head around all that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the babies were just there. They were just there. Now, they say Susan was an amazing mom, and David. They were both amazing parents. But when you got all this dysfunction, something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, nothing's good going to come of this. And unfortunately, it does seem to be the children every time that ends up paying the ultimate price for all of the dysfunction that they're born into. And it's so damn unfortunate. That's why that's why we do these cases and things like that. There's signs, y'all. There is signs. And if you know them, and people don't like to get involved in other people's business. I get that. It's like, she's batshit crazy. She don't need to have them kids, and it's sad, but somebody's got to be the bad guy and step up.
Well, it's the same as the Watts, like the Rusiks. They lived there for 18 months and they didn't do a damn thing to help them little girls. They could have stood up against Shanann and say, "Hey, unlock the damn doors, take the locks off."
Yeah, I mean,
nobody did.
Somebody's got to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be, because if you don't have at least one person that's going to be the bad guy and step up and go, "Look, y'all gonna have to do something here," or I'm going to take these kids myself until you get your shit worked out. Either way, somebody's got to be the bad guy. People hate the bad guy. I get that. But think about, American Idol, Simon Cowell. He was the bad guy, but who was the most respected dude on the show?
Simon Cowell.
All right.
I mean, you can
need a bad
even
guy.
make an anonymous phone call for them to check into it if you don't want your name out there.
Exactly.
Me personally, whenever I've called CPS, I've given my name. I don't give a shit if the person knows they're treating their kids horrible and that kid needed to be taken away. And that kid got taken away. The girl hates me with the passion and talks about me as often as she can. But you know what? At least that baby is now in a good home and is being taken care of and is loved.
That's good.
You don't go sneak off to go see your new man and leave your 2-year-old, your 18-month-old, and your 5-year-old to watch over them while they sleep. And you hurry up and come back the next morning. A candle was still lit. The candle tipped over and the living room caught on fire.
Oh my God.
That's how it got caught. That's how she got caught. And you bet your bottom dollar, when we lived in those apartments, I called. I didn't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could have probably did save this child. Like, I was reading a story today of a mom, and her parents, everybody around her knew she was just a raging meth head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she had her kids, of course. She had her kids in her apartment, and nobody heard from her for a few days. And so someone called in a welfare check, and cops looked through the window, and sure enough, they see her laid out there on the floor. And they see a little girl just running around in the house with no clothes on. So that's obviously, we can kick this door down. There's a medical emergency, obviously, right? So they do. They kick the door down. They go inside, and the mother is obviously OD'd. The meth had fentanyl in it. The autopsy has brought that back. But anyway, the little 3-year-old girl was she had done her best. She was eating candy, all kinds of stuff just to survive. But the kicker of it was this: 6 months old in a car seat in the bedroom on the floor, a baby strapped in its car seat, deceased. It had died of malnutrition. Yes, and this happened like over the weekend. It had died of malnutrition and dehydration. But what is so sad also to this is the 3-year-old didn't talk that well, if hardly at all. However, you could tell, they said, that she was trying to help her little 6-month-old brother, because there was eggshells and raw egg that was dried on the baby. She was trying to feed it.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and watering cups that she had gotten out of the toilet because she couldn't reach the sink.
Oh no, poor baby.
Which is this one?
And this was just like within the last week.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I'll find the story I was reading on it. I was like, thought about putting it on the Breaking Crime News channel, but I'm just like, no. I don't know. But
Bayou
it's
said
terrible.
that
I want to
this
say it was in Pencil. No, it was in Tennessee. It was in Tennessee.
Bayou said that this happened to her son's baby mama, Dopehead, found my grandson wandering around a golf course.
Oh, wow.
That's
Oh, my
horrible.
God.
I am so sorry.
That's horrific. Yeah. I mean, it's so unfortunate. And like I say, with all this dysfunction, and going back to that when I was just telling you about that happened recently, her family knew she had this problem, right? Obviously. Why was that? Why were they not heard from for, I don't remember how long it was, but it was a length of time, obviously, because the baby had already passed away from malnutrition and dehydration. And the little girl was very well on her way there as well. Why wait that long when you have not heard from someone has these little children and they are a raging drug addict? As I say, somebody's got to be the bad guy.
Like I say, if you see something, say something. You never know. Your little bit of saying something could save a child or could save a person. You never know.
Absolutely.
No matter how insignificant you think it is, it could be something big that busts a case wide open. You just never
Absolutely.
know.
And save
You
a little
know,
life. Save a little life. That wants to live, man. There's so many people out here that would take these babies in a flat minute.
oh, yes, there are people out there that can't conceive that would love to have a baby. And then people
hard to
like
wrap your head
Susan
around
Smith
it.
are murdering them. I mean, come on. CSI did because CSI, Miami and all them, they take stuff out of headlines and then they turn it into a show that they cram everything into an hour.
Yes.
And make it look like all the DNA and everything's done like in a lickety split.
Yeah.
They did one where a little girl was walking around the neighborhood and she had blood on her little onesie feet, or her little, she had a onesie on that went from her feet all the way up. I forget what that's called. But she was walking around the neighborhood and she had blood all over her feet. And they traced it back to her home, and everyone in the home was killed. And they were trying to figure out what happened. Well, they didn't make it, the story didn't go the way it really happened, but a lot of it did happen in real life to somebody I went to school with. Her and her husband was a drug dealer. They had a little boy, and they had a little girl. The little boy was at his dad's house, and their little girl was at home. And the guys came in and they wanted some drugs, and they wanted to trade their PlayStation or something for it. And they said no, that they weren't going to do that. They had enough PlayStations that they were waiting for people to actually bring them money. They wanted money for it. Well, the guy went back home, and his wife was friends with. I don't talk to her anymore, but he went home, got a gun, and him and that other guy went back and they killed both of them. And the little girl was in the playpen watching everything unfold. And they picked her up and took her out of the playpen so she could freely walk around the house, and they didn't harm her. But she was crying, for her mommy and daddy. She was barely 18 months old. So she didn't
Wow.
really understand
Yeah.
what was going on. Well, they left the door open, and she pushed the screen door open and proceeded to walk around the trailer park. And she went to where the maintenance guy always was with the flowers, and he had snacks for her, and she would help him with the flowers every day. The mom knew it, and everything was fine. And he noticed the blood on her feet, went back to her house, and the dad and the mom were both shot execution style.
Oh my God.
And the girl went to her first, they were never married. Her and the guy never got married that she had the son with, but he did not want the children to be separated. So him and his wife fought tooth and nail to get that little girl, and they finally won. And now that little girl lives with them, and she'll be a senior in college this year. That's how
Oh,
long
wow.
ago it was. And
Wow.
she's going to school to be a crime scene
Oh, really? That's
detective. Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. See, a positive from a negative.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Wow.
MacJay, you better not miss the next Skankers ball. I've been
Yeah.
sworn to secrecy because both Nelly and Kim know where I live, so I don't dare say a thing. It's going to be a really good one. I don't know. It's probably going to be up there with Ken and Barbie. But
Oh,
with this
yeah.
one here, people say this person is guilty, and then half of them say this person is not guilty. So it's
Yeah.
like you can be the judge, but don't miss this one.
Yeah,
Yes,
for
it
real.
will be a
Yes.
long one, guys. It's a deep dive, and bear with us. It might be 4 or 5 episodes long because there's a lot to go over with this case.
Absolutely. A bunch.
And Kim and I have
Yeah.
already started our research, and we have spent hours
Yes.
and hours listening to things, looking at things, and finding more things that we weren't expecting to find. And it's just like, holy moly, what did we get ourselves into?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot.
But not going to say if it's a guy or a girl that's involved in this one, but
Right?
Yeah.
just
Let's put it to you guys this way. I'm taking a week's vacation to go through this deep dive. That's how big of a deep dive we're doing.
It is. It's as controversial, if not more so, than the Watts case. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely
And I
thought
need my
provoking.
full attention. I can't do accounting and running the floor and directing everybody where to go and try to research this, because by the
You
time
tell
I
people
get
where to
home,
go all the time.
I know, right? Oh, I wish I could tell them really where to go. Some people. Oof.
Well, before we close this, let me run back over here to this. It's real quick, and I think it's important. It's something that MacJay brought to us. I didn't have. I had looked everywhere for it, didn't have it. And as I said, I think that Tom Finlay is a POS. I'm sorry, but I do. He seems like a narcissistic bastard to me. I'm sorry. That's just the way I read him. But MacJay was able to get us the actual letter from Tom and Susan's reply as well. So we're going to get this out here to you before we close this tonight, because I think it needs to be a part of it. You know, you'll kind of know. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in hearing the closing arguments to this case, as soon as this live ends, I'm going to make it public. And there is a hell of a lot in there, you know, about what happened during the trial evidence and things like that. And it's very interesting.
Very.
Very interesting. I actually got a lot of my information from the closing arguments.
That's true. It did help with a lot of stuff. And MacJay, thank you so much for sending this to us. We truly
Yes.
appreciate it. We love that you guys help us and support us in this new route that we're taking, and we truly thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Absolutely. And MacJay's also over, like, she's like the head mod over our Skankers Ball chat from our UnJustified Facebook group. So if y'all like Skankers Ball and you want to be a part of that chat, Skanker Ball fans are up in there. So,
and I'm working on trying to get us a Skanker Balls YouTube page up and going. I've just haven't had the time to finish everything and send it to Kim for approval. But
yeah,
I am working on that, so that way we'll have the
its own little
Skankers
page.
Ball, so
Yeah.
it doesn't get confused with everything else, you know?
Right. That's a great idea. And MacJay says that the letter actually came from Aunt Dianna, and she just passed it on. So thank you very much, Aunt Dianna. Much appreciated. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to read this, y'all, with my birds. If not, I'll do my best. I hope my birds ain't too annoying.
No, they're fine. They're just background noise. They're all right. They got lots to say. They only got a couple hours of daylight.
They did.
They're
What was you going to say,
pissed.
Dave?
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you were going to say something. Sorry.
No, echo.
Okay. All right. Let me pull this letter up so we can see it. And again, thanks to MacJay and Aunt Dianna for this.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so it looks like this is going to be dated November the 1st, 2008. Susan Smith's letter to Tom Finlay. Dear Tom, just a note to say thank you for everything. I could never express in words how much you mean to me. I will always treasure our friendship and all of the many wonderful memories that we have made. Now, remember, this is November the 1st on this one, okay? The boys were murdered October the 25th, okay? And then I think it was November the 3rd that she finally confessed that she's the one that did it. So this is the 1st, and this is what she's thinking about. She goes on to say, I want you to know that I have never felt with anyone the way I feel when I'm with you. I have never felt so needed. You are so very special. You are such a very special person, and that is part of why making love to you is so wonderful. I know how you feel about our relationship, and I respect that. I'm appreciative of your honesty with me. I do want us to be friends forever, and I will never let anything happen that would change that. I do hope that we will be able to date some and be together again someday. But if we never made love again, my feelings for you would not change because because having you as my friend is worth more than sex could ever be worth. Once again, I'm sorry for Saturday night, and I would take it back in a heart-shaped design, a heartbeat, if I could. I really wanted to be with you and hated that I wasn't. Thank you for being there for me through all the rough times. You are a true friend, and I want you to know that I will always love and care for you for the rest of my life. You are the best friend anyone could ever have. Well, I hope I said everything right. The bottom line is, I'm glad we are friends, and if that is all we can be, then we will just have to do a hell of a job at being that. Who knows what the future holds for our relationship? I'm just going to live one day at a time. One more thing before I go. Please don't ever hesitate to call me if you ever need anything. I will always be here for you. Friends forever, with a heart, Susan. Now think about that and the timing of that. I mean, seriously, that was November the 1st. What? Just
Days
not even,
after.
yeah, not even a week after she murdered her kids.
That's sick.
There's not even any mention of her kids in this.
Because she didn't care. That's why she got rid of them. She
It's
did not care.
disgusting. Okay, Tom's letter.
And that letter right there proves that this isn't because of her damn mental illness bullshit.
Right. I think so as too. I think so as well.
So she can turn her mental illness off and on when it suits her? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing she's worried about right there is him and being with him. I think that says a lot.
What do you
A
think,
hell of a
Dave?
lot. Yeah. What do you think about her writing him this a week after, while they're still looking for her kids, even though she knows exactly where they're at? This is 2 days before she confessed.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to her. She's got to have somebody. And for her, it seems like it's just all about sex and nothing else. And that's how it seems like with David, too, because, well, he's like a dog, so
Yeah.
it's like they're both of them are going from person to person to person, then coming home and saying, "What's for supper?" And then once they get their supper, they're back out looking again. So what do you do with stuff like that or people like that? They both have problems and nobody did anything about it again. So there's not
Exactly.
much you really can do.
Do you think if Tom's response here would have been something different that she would have ever confessed?
Well, a lot different.
I
A
think
lot
so as
different.
well. I think if he would have led her to believe that they were going to actually be together, she would have never confessed. And it's a possibility that those babies would still maybe be missing today.
Yeah, I don't think they would have ever found them.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have either.
So I think his response is possibly why she went ahead and confessed, because she's like, screw it. It's,
Mhm.
Because it was 2 days later.
Unless they would have found them when those 7 people were killed later on.
There
They
wouldn't
may
have been
have
any
found
reason
it.
for them being there, though.
Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't have been at the
True.
memorial. True. I didn't think about that. True. Well, let's see what Tom's response to that was. Dear Susan, I hope you don't mind, but I think clearer when I am typing, so this letter is being written on my computer. This is a very difficult letter for me to write because I know how much you think of me. Like, I don't know, that just that first sentence is like, how much you think of me. I don't know. And I want you to know that I am flattered that you have such a high opinion of me. Susan, I value our friendship very much. You are one of the few people on this earth that I feel I can tell anything. You are intelligent, beautiful, sensitive, understanding, and possess many other wonderful qualities that I and many other men appreciate. You will, without a doubt, make some lucky man a great wife, but unfortunately, it won't be me. Even though you think we have much in common, we are vastly different. We have been raised in two totally different environments and therefore think totally different. That's not to say that I was raised better than you or vice versa. It just means that we can come from two different backgrounds. When I started dating Laura, I knew our backgrounds were going to be a problem. Right before I graduated from Auburn University, well, why did he have to put that there? Why didn't he just say before I graduated college? But no,
No, he's got to show that he's more superior.
he does. He
to-
makes me sick, to be quite honest. And I love Auburn, but ugh. In 1990, I broke up with a girl, Allison, that I had been dating for over 2 years. I loved Allison very much and we were very compatible. Unfortunately, we wanted different things out of life. She wanted to get married and have children before the age of 28, and I did not. So see, he pisses me off. The conflict spurred our breakup. But we have remained friends through the years. After Allison, I was very hurt. I decided not to fall for anyone again until I was ready to make a long commitment. For my first 2 years in union, I dated very little. In fact, I can count the number of dates I had on one hand. But then Laura came along. We met at Conso, and I fell for her like a ton of bricks. Things were great at first and remained good for a long time. But I knew deep in my heart that she was not the one for me. So he was just playing her, right?
Yep.
People tell me that when you find the person that you will want to spend the rest of your life with, you will know it. Well, even though I fell in love with Laura, I have my doubts about a long and lasting commitment, but I never said anything and I eventually hurt her very, very deeply, and I won't do that again. Susan, I could really fall for you. You have so many endearing qualities about you, and I think that you are a terrific person. But like I have told you before, there are some things about you that aren't suited for me. And yes, I am speaking about your children. I'm sure that your kids are good kids, but it really wouldn't matter how good they may be. The fact is, I just don't want children. These feelings may change one day, but I doubt it. With all of the crazy mixed up things that take place in this world today, I just don't have the desire to bring another life into it. And I don't want to be responsible for anyone else's children either. But I'm very thankful that there are people like you who are not so selfish as I am and don't mind bearing the responsibility of children. He is such an ass.
Yep.
Like, I can't stand him. Like, I don't know. If anyone thought the way that I do, our species would eventually become extinct. Well, maybe you shouldn't procreate. You shouldn't create.
That's right.
But our differences go far beyond the child issue. Okay, then this is going to be the letter, y'all, that he wrote her. And this is the letter supposedly of why she did these murders. So these are vice versa. I'm seeing this right now. This is the original letter he wrote her. That must have been her reply we read above on November the 1st. So obviously he did not reply back to her again. And since he didn't, I believe that's why she confessed. So yeah, this is the original Dear Jane letter. And it's awful. It just is. Okay, where was we at? But our differences go far beyond the children issue. We are just two totally different people, and eventually those differences would cause us to break up because I know myself so well. I'm sure of this. Don't be discouraged. There is someone out there for you. In fact, it's probably someone that you may not know at this time or that you may know but would never expect. Either way, before you settle down with anyone again, there is something that you need to know. Susan, because you got pregnant and married at such an early age, you missed out on much of your youth. I mean, one minute you were a kid and the next minute you were having kids. Because I come from a place where everyone had the desire and the money to go to college. God, I can't stand him, y'all. I just cannot stand him.
He
No,
likes
you
to
don't.
brag about
You
his
come
money.
from Mountain Brook, Alabama, bud. I know 20 minutes from me. So let me tell you this. Where you come from ain't what you putting it out to be. And no, everyone didn't have the money to go to Auburn University, you freak. Having the responsibility of children at such a young age is beyond my comprehension. At such a young age, what was she, like 20, 22? That's not such a young age. I mean, to have children. Maybe some people think it is. I don't. Anyhow, my advice to you is to wait and be very choosy about your next relationship. I can see this may be a bit difficult for you because you are a bit boy crazy. But as the proverb states, good things come to those who wait. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and have a good time. In fact, I think you should do just that. Have a good time and capture some of that youth that you missed out on. It's like he is continuously reminding her what a nuisance her kids are. Are y'all picking that up here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like that's basically all he's talking about. Your kids are a nuisance. Like they're just in the way. That's
They
what I'm
took
picking
away
up.
your they took away your
Oh
childhood, you
God,
know.
this dude. Oh my
That's what he's
God.
saying.
But just don't get seriously involved with anyone until you have done the things in life that you want to do first. Then the rest will fall into place. Okay, you idiot, telling her she needs to go out and have fun and catch that youth. Dude, she's got kids. She's got responsibility now. Too late for that shit. Sorry.
Yep.
Susan, I'm not mad at you about what happened this weekend. Actually, I'm very thankful. As I told you, I was starting to let my heart warm up to the idea of us going out as more than just friends. But seeing you kiss another guy put things back into perspective. Okay, he was making out with a married woman in the hot tub. That's why she did that, which
That's right.
that was kind of ridiculous for her to just do a little revenge. How do you like this? Let me see if you're jealous. But I mean, come on, dude. You was doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was
And you
thinking about making a permanent relationship with her while he's making out with a married woman. Bull crap.
exactly. And he had been dating Susan for a damn year when this hot tub party happened.
He's so full of crap.
He
He's
makes
a
me sick.
player. That's all
I
he
cannot
is.
stand. And look at him. He better be glad he's got some money, because honey, if he didn't have no money, hey, that's the only damn reason anybody ever looked at him. My opinion. Sorry. And he's probably living back up here in Mountain Brook. I'd just love to run into him up there at the Galleria Mall. Anyway, I remember how I hurt Laura, and I won't let that happen again. And therefore, I can't let myself get close to you. We will always be friends, but our relationship will never go beyond that of a friendship. And as for your relationship with B. Brown, of course, you have to make your own decisions in life, but remember, you have to live with the consequences also. Everyone is held accountable for their actions, and I would hate for people to perceive you as an unreputable person. If you want to catch a nice guy like me someday, then you have to act like a nice girl. Dude, you're not a nice guy.
Mm-mm.
Not by any means. I wish she had never met you.
He gets what he wants from the woman and he takes off.
Maybe we need to deep dive this freak. Anyway.
Pretty sure he's got,
Yeah.
stuff that.
Yeah, maybe we need to deep dive his ass.
No woman wants
What's
to
he
catch.
did? Yeah, what's he did in the last 30 years? I know they sold off that business, so they're probably back up here in Birmingham. Anyway, as you know, nice girls don't sleep with married men. Well, vice versa.
Well, nice men don't sleep with married women, so
Exactly.
touche.
Besides, I want you to feel good about yourself. And I'm afraid that if you sleep with B. Brown, or any other married man for that matter, you will lose your self-respect. How in the hell she got any self-respect after reading what he just wrote her? Oh, man. I know I did when we were messing around earlier this year. And remember, this is October. So they've been dating each other all year for him to be such an ass here at the end. So please think about your actions before you do anything you will regret. I care about you, but also care for Susan Brown, and I would hate to see anyone get hurt. Susan may say that she wouldn't care if her husband had an affair, but you and I know that is not true. Anyhow, as I've already told you, you are a very special person, and don't let anyone tell you or make you feel any different. I see so much potential in you, but only you can make it happen. Don't settle for mediocre in life. Go for it all and only settle for the best. I do. I haven't told you this, but I'm extremely proud of you for going to school. I am a firm believer in higher education. And once you obtain a degree from college, there is no stopping you. And don't let these idiot boys from Union make you feel like you are not capable or slow you down. After you graduate, you will be able to go anywhere you want in this world. And if you ever wanted to get a good job in Charlotte, my father is the right person to know. Imagine that. He and Coney know everyone who is anyone in the business world of Charlotte. And if I can ever help you with anything, don't hesitate to ask. Well, this letter must come to an end. It's 11:50 p.m. and I am getting very sleepy. But I wanted to write you this letter because you are the one who is always making the effort for me. Oh my God, y'all. He just makes me sick. And I wanted to return the friendship. I've appreciated it when you have dropped me nice little notes or cards or the present at Christmas. And it is about time that I start putting a little effort into our friendship. Which reminds me, I thought long and hard about getting you something for your birthday. Really? But I decided not to because I wasn't sure what you might think. Now, I am sorry I didn't get you anything, so you can expect something from me at Christmas. But do not buy me anything for Christmas. All I want from you is a nice, sweet card, and I'll cherish that more than any store present. Again, you will always have my friendship, and your friendship is one that I will always look upon with sincere affection. Tom. P.S. It's late, so please don't count off for spelling or grammar. Oh my God, y'all. I don't even know. Mac, thank you so much for sending this to me, but oh my God. Like, this is the first time, y'all, I've ever read this in its whole, and it literally makes me nauseous. Like, I don't know. And I don't think I'm reading too deep into that either. And Aunt Diane, thank you very much for sharing this. I really appreciate it. I'd never read this before. I wondered because there is some of it mentioned here and there, but I had no clue it was that deep. And I wished that I could go back in time and Susan show me this letter and and maybe me and her could have been friends at that time. I'm just saying, this is before she done anything to the boys. And if she had shown me that letter, honey, I'm just the friend that would have stomped right in that damn office and said, who in the hell do you think you are?
No kidding.
Oh, this guy, man. Oh my God. He makes me sick.
He's a disgusting pig.
Oh my goodness. Like, I had no clue that letter was. All he did, y'all, is continue to down talk her children and her. And her, yes. Like, you're trash. You're lucky I ever even spoke to you. Like, I see that you've been trying like hell to get me, thank you for letting me sleep with you for a year, whatever, but it meant not shit.
Yeah. That's what I said. He's too high and mighty for her and looked down at her. So he just wanted her for sex and that was it. So
literally. But he had been leading her on like crazy. And then he starts
and then
this
to
letter
insinuate her
off.
kids are in the way, that her kids are the problem.
Continuously. Like, that's like he just continues. Even using this little story about this ex-girlfriend that he probably didn't even have. she wanted kids, he didn't, blah, blah, blah. If it was up to me, then nobody, the world would come extinct. Well, if it was up to you left to procreate, dude, the world needs to come extinct because we don't really need no more of you and your dads. I'm just saying. Did you even catch that? My dad is the one to know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my God, this dude.
His advisor.
And I know David Nelly, y'all probably never saw that letter in its entirety either. Is it not disgusting?
It is repulsive.
Oh
I
my
literally was getting sick to my stomach over here. I was getting mad, balling my fist. My son's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Nope."
Oh, that's terrible. I will link it in the description box below. This letter. Again, full credit to Aunt Dianna and Aunt Dianna 157, and of course MacJay for passing it on to us. We really appreciate y'all. That letter just really pissed me off even more. That's a great way to end this live, isn't it? I can't stand him. I wish that. Well, you know what, y'all? David did kick his ass. Y'all know that, right?
No.
He did. David kicked his ass. They were, her and David, of course, were separated, not living together or nothing else. But David, I don't know, jealous, I guess. I don't know. He had went in somewhere or went to a restaurant or whatever and saw them two there. And cornered him outside and kicked his ass.
Yeah, I remember that now. It's in that book.
Yes.
Yes, it's just, sorry, I've read so many, I get confused.
Yeah, it's also in the closing arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's David kicked his ass. Go, David.
Oh shit.
He needed that ass kicked several times. If you ask me. What a
Mr.
ass.
Tough Guy run to his daddy for help.
No kidding. No, you know what he did? He's like, oh, well, that kind of spooked me up a little bit, Susan. I can't be sleeping with you no more because, I don't like getting my ass kicked. Because, I ain't got no hair. Bruises show. Oh, man, don't even get me started. Can't stand that dude. Nelly,
What did she see in him?
I don't know. David looked a hell of a lot better. I mean, if you want to go for that, but think about the people she is attracted to. Look at the prison guard, not being ugly, but come on.
I know looks aren't everything, guys. I'm not.
Anybody that would give her any kind of attention by looks.
Yeah.
And it looked like all father figures, so.
It really did. I mean, even though this dude was only 27, Mr. Tom Finlay, even though he was 27, he looked 57.
Mm-hmm.
With his very cool receding hairline. I mean, why didn't he do like the Menendez and go get him a fake hair thing made or something?
Toupee.
I mean,
guys, I'm not a vain person, and I don't look at somebody and be like, oh, I wouldn't talk to him or date him. But the first time she spoke to him, he had that arrogant attitude. He did not hide it. So
how the hell is not a turnoff immediately?
Exactly. That makes him super ugly to me.
No kidding.
There's somebody in my everyday life that unfortunately I am stuck with them in my life. I'm not going to say who in case they are out here listening, but you know who you are.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with having them in my life. I have to. But they're beautiful on the outside, so beautiful. But on the inside, terrible person. Terrible, mean, a drunk, doesn't care about anybody else but what they want, treats their children like shit, treats family like shit. And it just makes that beauty she has on the outside, it just makes it all go away for me. Once you show your true side, your ugliness is shown. There can be people that you don't find attractive on the outside, but can fall in love with who they are on the inside, and it changes what you see on the outside,
Exactly.
So never, ever judge a book by its cover just because they don't look up to par to what your friends or what your family think you should do, it's what's on the inside that matters. And,
Absolutely.
my husband, yes, I do think he's a handsome man, but that's not what made me fall in love with him. I fell in love with what he has on
Him.
the inside. He's a
Yes.
wonderful man, bend over backwards for me. He's been here for me through thickness and thin and helped me through health scares. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he got scared himself at one point and kind of acted stupid, but he fixed it. But he was scared. He didn't
Yeah.
know what to do with the breast cancer thing because we just went through it with my mom. We just got the diagnosis that my sister was given 5 years, so he panicked.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know what to do, so he started
Right.
acting stupid.
Right.
And
Bayou
he's got a
said,
shiny belly.
yeah.
He's got what?
He has a shiny belly.
Shiny belly.
Bayou says that Susan, being a person with mental illness, it wouldn't have took much to send her off the deep end. It's like they blow things out of proportion 100-fold. I agree. Yeah,
That's
that
true.
letter definitely really sent her there. Can we keep it to personality? Absolutely. We usually do. The reason that I had to just bounce this guy, I can't help it. He was just acting like he was so much better than. I'm just so much better than you. And your kids are just a nuisance. And if you read between the lines of his letter, literally the only thing he can do is sit here and degrade every other female he's ever been with. So sometimes, if people's going to kick those shots out there, they need to get them back.
And then to end it with his talking about his dad.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
This dude just done nothing but degrade everyone except him and his dad. Every female, everyone. Dude, in my opinion, deserves whatever the hell's threw at him.
He thinks females are just there for one thing and one thing only.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Right, for whatever reason, she seems to have developed her sense of self-worth. Yeah, obviously she had some serious self-esteem problems. That's pretty obvious. And thinking that sex was the way she could literally get anyone's attention. Someone asked earlier, what did her stepdad look like? There is a photo of him in the premiere we just did. He's, to me, just looks like an old man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I don't know.
But he definitely did groom her.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
And if that's the way she was brought up, that's probably the reason why she went from guy to guy to guy, because that's all she knew.
Yeah, Wednesday, go back, honey, and listen to that letter, or I will link it below if you'd rather read it yourself and not my crazy reading. You'll see what I mean. I guarantee you by the time you get finished reading his letter to her, you're going to be you're going to want to go slap him. I guarantee
it. And have a shower.
Yeah, it's definitely not something we do here, but my Jesus, this man done nothing but degrade every female and everybody in his life. And he continued to just continuously throw down on the kids in his own way. He made me sick. Okay, y'all. Well, we're going to call it a night. We've been here damn near 3 hours.
3 hours, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna call it a night here, and Dave's got some good stuff planned for What's Wednesday. Hell of a show on that. Not gonna be a popular one, but that's what we do.
Are they ever popular? I think we get a lot of haters.
Oh, they're popular with the minions that like to strike us.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not going to be popular, but hey, I mean, it's all facts. It is what it is. Anyway,
maybe we should come up with a new name for their last name so that way it doesn't flag them.
Oh no, they'll be here anyways. Just because.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah. Actually, when YouTube comes back and looks at it, they okay it. So
yeah, there's no nudity going on here.
Right?
They should be actually going after the people that's reporting it.
And they can they know exactly who reports. They can follow the IP addresses. They have that capability. And why they don't do something to the ones that give false strikes is beyond me.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it either. I
I
mean,
mean,
if
there's
we,
channels I don't like, and there's one that I'm not going to say that it has been taken down and keeps coming back. And for the love of God, I don't know how. But I would never go on there and put a false strike, you know?
yeah, I've never even reported except one time, and that's been, oh hell, I don't know, 3, 4 years ago maybe, when I was being doxxed to hell and back,
Mm-hmm.
bad. And that's the only thing I reported on is like, hey, tell them, 'cause not to be mentioning everything about who I am, where I live, all this, that's not cool, so
I
they
only
didn't
reported
lose their
one
channel,
channel,
nothing like that, but come on.
and that was whenever I was friends with another YouTuber and was doing what I thought like I was doing here, but turned out to be something else. And this other YouTuber started saying derogatory comments about me. So, of course, I reported it
Oh, yeah.
because it
Yeah.
wasn't true. And that YouTuber later emailed me and apologized, but
Well, that's good. I didn't get that. I didn't get that, but it's okay.
well, he
That's okay.
had an email, so I emailed him. I was like, you had no right to say that. You don't even know me. I am not a shared sister wife bullshit. That's not my cup of tea,
Oh,
weirdo. And
yeah, I
I
remember
don't
that.
even live in the same
Oh,
place these
yeah.
people do.
I remember that. Oh, my goodness, yeah. That was during a bad time.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
That was when I first found out that I had breast cancer, so I was pissed. I
Yeah,
had a lot going on.
there was a lot going on.
So, but, well, that's neither here nor there.
But
It's
thank you,
over and
everybody,
done
for
with.
spending your evening or your day or your your morning with us.
Your
We really
morning.
do appreciate it.
We do. And the moderators, everyone that's here with us, we do appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much for watching the chat. And guys, thank you for being here with us. We wouldn't be who we are without you guys. Like I said before, we love you guys very much.
That's right. Team Unjustified.
And the next Skankers Ball, like Dave hinted, it will be a surprise.
It
We are
will.
going to start, we'll do our little premiere right before we start so that way you'll know who we're talking about. But for now, we're just going to keep you guys guessing.
Yeah.
But please, for real, send me suggestions because I will add them to the list and research them. But can you pop my email up there real quick, Kim?
There you go.
Send it to me there and I will add it to the list and gladly cover what you want to know. And if you know something, like, was it MacJay that said she knew someone or that they knew someone? Kim,
Yeah,
last
I
time?
got it wrote down. Yeah, MacJay sent us a pretty good list that
Yes.
she had
So,
collected from people in the Skankers Ball chat.
so I mean, if there's somebody that you know personally in a case and stuff and wouldn't mind me interviewing and Kim interviewing you, we cover those kind of cases as well. We want to get these cases out there just so people know what's going on and so these victims aren't forgotten.
That's right. That's right. It's for them. It's for them. They're perpetrators. They need to be known for what they did. And the victims' stories needs to be heard. Even though they don't have a voice, we can be their voice.
Exactly. Like Dave said, we don't want you guys to forget these children and the other victims that are out there. I mean, like Kim said, they don't have a voice anymore, and we can be that voice.
That's right.
And the next one might be Skanker of the Year.
Yeah, we're getting close to the Skanker. It's going to be hard as hell to beat Carla, but you never know, right?
That's
You
right.
never know. It can happen. It could happen.
It
I
very
don't
well
know.
could.
I don't know if Susan will. I don't think Susan beats Carla.
No.
No.
Susan's bad. Susan is bad. And we're not talking about, y'all, the crime itself. All crimes are horrific. They're all terrible. We're just talking about the person in general, the skanker in general.
Their personality and what they are, what they did and do.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, everyone, I hope you all have a great rest of your night or morning, wherever you may be.
Thank you for being here, and we love you guys and can't wait to see you again soon.
Have a great night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below on your thoughts of this video. And until next time, this is UnJustified.